Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Higher Line podcast. So you have seen the Dos Equis commercial with the world's most interesting man, but that's bullshit. I actually have the world's most interesting man here. Basically, an uncle to me. You were my mother's neighbor as a child.
Yep.
Daniel Baldwin. So Dan, just a few things, has hop freight trains as a child.
Oh yeah, I was young.
Vagabond all over the world. You were
the whole world,
but a lot of it. A part of it.
Countries and
You
stuff,
were
sure.
Warrant Officer, pilot in the Army. You've done movies. You've done
movies, bit parts of some movies.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
You've done acting. You've done some print stuff as a model. You've done photography. You've done lighter than air aviation. You've flown airplanes. What else have you done?
Well, that's a big
one.
A to Z.
So, predicating the conversation on this, as a kid, this guy'd swing through town once, twice a year from his tramping around the planet, and we'd hear some story of some far-flung place, or maybe closer-flung place, Hollywood or
I'll
Florida.
throw something in real quick. If I'm the world's most interesting man, I know the world's most interesting family, the Shook family, and 11 children. I'll just say they saw something in me. I guess I did my own thing, and they got 11 kids, and all of them from the beginning, there's something about the wild side. They do their thing. They still do. And back to you, Mick. But,
no. That's what we're just having a conversation. I appreciate that.
Well,
so
it's not an exaggeration.
Well, I've talked about this before. So this is Route 66, America's Ghost Road, 1989. You traveled the whole of old Route 66, what you could. Right, because it's been tore up.
Yeah.
You gave me this on my 30th birthday, so going on 15 years ago. And like this right here just kind of points to like what or who you are. You just decided, hey, I'm going to jump in the car and just travel around the country.
Well, I was getting out of the Army from Germany. That was my duty station for 3 years there. And anyways, I always liked photography. I wanted to do something, so I got some good cameras. I was driving on the Autobahn listening to the song Route 66, and my time was coming up in the U.S. Army. And I thought, I'm going to go back and photograph Route 66. Begins in Chicago, ends in Santa Monica, California. A few people were doing that already, but not many. And I did the whole trip. Took about 2 months. Hundreds of photos, maybe a couple thousand. Went through them, and I got a couple magazine articles out of it. And 2 magazines, Photographic, and another one, Touring America, was a new magazine coming out. And that was kind of a feather in the cap. But trying to make any kind of living out of photojournalism, travel, it's a real tough nut to crack. And but it was kind of a labor of love, and I didn't make much money at it, actually, other than the articles themselves, $1,000 or something, but all that went into it.
All that travel and...
Yeah, I know. And then Mickey, I see photos a couple of years ago. He actually was out in Newark, New Mexico, where it's all gone. There was a little general store with that lady.
This one here.
Yeah, with their cat, Pitty Pat. It was just...
Newkirk,
yeah. Which that place was, I think, in National Geographic 20 or 30 years ago, that store, and I think I got to stop in there. And... anyways, it was great. I met a lot of great people on that road. Bob Waldmeier, amongst them.
Now, wait a sec. We got to tell a Bob Waldmeier story. That's where you got bit by the rattlesnake.
Yeah, on his property. Yeah. And,
so you got bit by a rattlesnake. Did Bob suck the venom out?
Not quite. Bob, if you Google that name, Bob Waldmeier, there's hundreds of sites. Bob was the inspiration, that movie, the Disney movie, Cars.
He was the inspiration for the movie?
He was going to, the Volkswagen, it was going to be named Waldmeier, and he had a site, I saw the document from Pixar, that would be named Waldmeier. Instead, they named it, what was the name?
I don't remember.
Fillmore.
Fillmore,
like the Fillmore hippie thing.
Like the theater.
Anyways, Bob didn't want to use that because he didn't want to see his image in thousands of McDonald's sold, and they certainly did eventually make a plastic thing of Fillmore, the car. but it was kind of an amazing movie. Anyways, Bob bought a piece of property out in Kingman, Arizona, outskirts. It was an old general store, and abandoned. And the place was kind of infested with rattlesnakes. I didn't know that, and Bob would make these things almost his pets. And I walked around his nature walk one morning, and he had like a trail back there for visitors. And coming back into the place, he told me, watch out, Tuffy hangs out over there, rattlesnakes near the building. So I'm walking in that area and I'm looking, I don't want any rattlesnakes. Well, the snake was about 30 feet from there in a ravine, Western Diamondback. And anyways, they hide where they blend in. And so I just step over this little dried up rocky ravine and nail me in the ankle. And I look down, I see the head release. I think I've just been bitten by a rattlesnake. You hear that
like all the old West movies come to mind. Like,
so I
tell my mother I loved her.
Yeah, I get back to Bob's place, which was a few feet away actually. Pound on the window. It's about 8 a.m. in the morning. He wakes up. He looks out the window. I go, I said, your snake just bit me. He goes, God damn! He starts yelling at him. I go, I didn't do anything, like I'm molesting his. He's with all these insects. The guy has a real relation with all these.
Like you're out there throwing rocks at him or something.
Like I'm screwing with the snake. He said, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "Why don't you take me to Kingman to the hospital?" So I went through the whole.
So
thing.
Wait, what did he do then? So you get bit? Remember he?
Yeah. He says, "All right, let's go." So a few minutes later, he fires up his old Volkswagen microbus, and he brings out. I don't know what he's doing. He gives me a 5-gallon bucket, and there's actually dirty water in there. So we're riding there. Put your foot in there. So I put my foot in there. I looked down. It was just dirty water. And I'm thinking, why am I doing this?
So you got some old hippie in the desert that gives you a bucket of dirty freaking rainwater or something. Soak your foot in it.
So, anyways, he used to tell stories about Bob Waldmeier Legion. He was an artist, and at his store, the Cozy Shack, whatever, where they sell hot dogs. It was on Route 66. His dad was one of the inventors of the corn dog. It just gets wild. Bob had brought back a rattlesnake.
Another story.
And had it in a cage in a terrarium in Illinois, in Springfield, Illinois, which was against the law. Finally, somebody reported this, and he got busted, actually. I saw the paperwork. He had to go before a judge for bringing the snake into Illinois, and the sentence was he was going to do artwork for the state of Illinois Wildlife Department. And he did. He did posters for them and whatnot. That was his sentence.
Like those beautiful pictures of deer and ducks and all that stuff. Yeah, exactly.
And he had to turn it, the snake, either they brought it back or he had to turn it into Illinois because it's illegal to have that type of creature, in Illinois. And anyways, we got to the hospital and they took care of me.
Tell that story a little bit.
Well, the snake nailed me, and they don't know what's going to happen because the snake can buy a dry bite. They had to be sure of the snake, otherwise they give you 4 different venoms or so. And Bob, luckily, was kind of an amateur, whatever they call it, ologist. He came with it. He says, I'm sure it was a Western Diamondback. So they flew in venom from Phoenix.
And didn't you ask the doctor how much it was going to cost?
Well, I'm laying there. First, they shoot you up with some a morphine drip, and you don't care what. You're high as a kite on that stuff. And I'm trying to figure this out, and he says, "Well, this they observe you, and the see where the poison is going, and you could tell it's going up your leg." He says, "We suggest the antivenom," and I asked, "How much is that?" He just shook his head. He says, "Don't worry about the cost. It was about $2,000 a vial or something," and. Anyways, the stuff's going up slowly, and he says, we suggest that. I go, what's the worst case scenario? I'm laying there pretty high. And he says, worst case scenario, you can go all the way to your heart, cardiac shock, And so I took that anti-snake venom, kind of woke up the next morning and in the hospital there. And my foot buffed up over the days like a football. Had I taken that, for sure would have been an amputation. And I got out about a week, 5 days later. They did a great job, Kingman Regional Medical Center. And anyways, Bob ended up saying, he says, Dan, I envy you. You envy me. Yeah. He says, I handle these things, but you've been bit by a snake, I go, okay, Bob, you have his strengths.
Let me go take you to the ravine and piss this tuppy off
One last
again.
thing, I'm healing in the hospital, and for a few days, Bob would come and visit, and he brought me, he likes antique stuff, he did, Bob's gone, and he brings me this textbook, a medical textbook, like 50 years old or something from some university, and it shows snake bites, and it shows like people's arm riding off and stuff, that didn't get treated. And I'm looking at this stuff, I think, God, this could be serious, but anyways.
Yeah, that could be serious. People die of snake bite.
Well, yeah, but it was handled, and a doctor, it was some, here again, I think from India or something, he'd come by in the morning and look at my chart, and I'm wondering, how is this going? I say, doctor, how's my, oh yeah, okay, and just, what does that mean, But finally it healed, then it took a few weeks after that, and it was a real trip. Eventually the scars went away, but yeah, it came out good. They told me stories there of people getting bit, and they got to have, one guy got bit in a porta potty, a construction worker in Kingman, by a brown recluse spider, and didn't know it, whatever. They had to have his, part of his leg, I guess, knee down or something, amputated. Stuff serious if it's not treated properly.
Take the venom, anti-venom.
Yeah, Bob was something else, and that was one little chapter.
You met him on this journey?
Yeah, actually in Williams, Arizona. I saw a microbus there. God, this goes way back. That was
89?
Yeah, probably after I got out of the military. 87, I guess. And I'm in Kingman photographing pictures of Route 66 and old gas stations, diners, and all that stuff. And I see a microbus, and it's got real nice painted symbol on it of Route 66. It says, unofficial Route 66 historic vehicle, unofficial Route 66, unofficial. What the hell is that? I mean, this is Bob, unofficial Route 66 vehicle. So then I met him, the classic hippie, the hair, and Bob was something else. He really was. And
when did he pass?
He passed now, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. But he had people from other countries actually coming to his funeral in Springfield.
Because so many people had met him traveling the route?
Yeah, he became, he had his visitor center, and he just became kind of a really notable figure, and great sense of humor. And Bob would make these posters. He traveled out of college making these posters, bioregional posters. They're still for sale, of different college towns, and then it turned into entire states, where it was like a bird's eye view of the state.
These.
Yeah. It would have the history of the area, everything that went on. Bob was fascinated by that, and the wildlife. Nobody ever did such a thing. And then his masterpiece was the Route 66. It took him several years from Chicago to L.A. with all of the history and the history of all the vegetation and animal life from Chicago to L.A.
Where's that at?
You can still buy those. Just go online.
Print it in.
His brother sells that
What's
stuff.
his full name?
Robert Waldmeier.
Robert Waldmeier.
You just Google that. You'll see several hundred things to go to.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Let's go back.
So that's one. That was fascinating.
So you grew up in Hazelcrest. Or no, your parents first lived in...
I grew up in Harvey as a child, yeah.
Which is a very nice place now.
Yeah, the FBI said about Harvey, somewhat funny, somewhat sad, about 4 years ago, Harvey is the most dangerous city in all of Illinois. So I guess that compares to Chicago.
For you guys, Harvey used to be on the south suburb, like quintessential suburbia after World War II, rows of nice little framed homes, city park, all that.
A lot of industry there. It was somewhat wealthy, a lot of Buddha and all these Ellis Chalmers. There were huge plants for Harvey during wartime. And it went through a racial change. And it's just very sad. It's kind of like Gary, Indiana, maybe even worse.
Yeah, it probably is.
Size.
Last time I was down there, there's like trees growing through the roofs of houses.
Yeah, a lot of the houses are gone. A lot of the businesses, the buildings are gone. And
Mayor got in trouble for some crazy corruption.
That's where the mall, that's another thing, the Dixie Square Mall, which for years was the oldest abandoned mall in America, 30 years. And that's where they filmed the Blues Brothers scene of the car chase.
Which we'll come back to that.
Another crazy story,
We'll come back to that. So you grew up in Harvey. Father was a tradesman.
Electrician, yeah.
And
a union man in Chicago.
So eventually you moved to become my mother's neighbor the couple times over in Hazelcrest.
That area got bad, so people moved south like they're still doing. Moved further away, and we ended up in Hazelcrest, which is another nice sleepy town. It's still it ain't the same, and it was a great place to grow up. She lived down. I got to say something about the Shook family. We'll just leave it a quick minute. Their dad was, his mom became a serious Christian, met her future husband who became a pastor, and they had a church up here in Woodstock. I'll just leave this for one quick minute. I found out later, the church, some people were leaving Mike's church, Pastor Mike's church, because his family was beating up kids. The kids were getting beaten up. And some people were leaving that church because I found that out later.
Don't be a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, this
I don't know this story to be true.
Well,
so
maybe it's exaggerated, but I'm sure it happened to some degree.
sure it
But
was
the kids
true.
were getting roughed up, and some of the people
what,
leaving this church, but whatever.
I can neither confirm nor deny that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's just nothing evil about it.
There was a
It's just-
story which I can derail our entire discussion that comes to mind.
we don't want to do that.
No, I bought a kid a pocket knife for his birthday. Little Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
We're like maybe 10, 11, 12. And this was, I am a victim in this story. So I buy this kid this pocket knife, and we're at like his sleepover birthday party. Maybe we're 5th, 6th grade. One of the boys at the party is looking at the knife, and he's sitting there like checking out the blade. And another boy who's on the couch gets up to like run to go to the kitchen or go to the bathroom or something like that. And as he gets up, his hand goes across the blade. It's a brand new Victorinox Swiss Army knife. Those things were like scalpels. Yeah. Lances him open. I mean, blood everywhere. Holy shit. You know, he needs like 8 or 20 stitches or something. Well, I purchased the knife. When this happened, I'm 15 feet away. I watched it happen, but somehow the story telephone games into Mickey brought a knife and cut him. And as like a 10-year-old, I'm like,
Was this at church or
this
what?
was at like a sleepover party.
Okay, yeah.
So the story, I'm trying to tell people, I didn't cut him. Like, I had nothing to freaking do with it. I'm freaking 15 feet away. I got punished for it. Like, and I'm like, trying to like, you know, set the record straight.
Yeah.
And all these kids were little assholes that were happy to just let me, like, I'm like, tell them what happened. Nobody did. So those little assholes. Back to you though. So we're in Hazel Crest. I remember we'd go visit my grandma, who's deceased now, but the house that my mom lived in that my grandfather purchased in whatever, 1950 something. Yeah. We'd go walk down to the Baldwins and, I don't know, get butter or whatever, say hi. My mom would walk down there. You didn't live there anymore then. That was probably like around this time.
Yeah.
You know, 80s. You were gone.
Folks moved to Florida then.
But they still lived there at the point that I'm remembering.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever,
yeah.
because we'd walk down there and knock on the door, and my mom would say hi. So you grew up there in this was kind of farmland and stuff then.
Right out in front, there was, that was the area we were in. It was built like late 50s or whatever. There were some of the kind of bigger homes for that area instead of the real small ones. It was a great place to grow up. Harvey was great as a child. It was just like almost quite like a Mayberry city. It was a little bigger than that, but it was a great place to grow up. And thousands of cities like that over the United States. They're still there, really. Woodstock here is a city. You couldn't grow up in a better area,
Sure.
really, outside of Chicago.
So you, having this, got yourself into all kinds of mischief. You would get bored in your little sleepy town, so you'd do things like jump on freight trains. How old were you when you started doing shit like that?
I hopped a few freight trains. My uncle was an engineer. I like trains, especially steam. I liked railroading of the past, especially steam locomotives. But my uncle was an engineer on the Illinois Central. And I'd go down to Homewood or whatever and hop on a train, a freight train. I went to Southern Illinois one day and did that a few times.
And your parents didn't, you're like...
They were away, I think. They were away for a few days. I don't know, maybe I was 14 or whatever. I was really lucky. I get out of the thing in Mount Vernon, Illinois. I'd never heard of the place. And I'm walking around. I think, I need a train going back. And sure enough, once pulling out the yard, and I jumped in that. That's when they had...
How did you know it wasn't going to get switched somewhere and end up in Colorado?
Well, that route particular, I kind of knew that route's going to go back to Chicago area. It ends up in Homewood, Illinois. That was really, it worked out nice. But being in that boxcar... Being in that boxcar, I know why that boxcar was not being used. It had a bad wheel on it. So the doors were open. But it was really cool. I'm going single track, and there's just woods on each side in Southern Illinois. The air's going through is just, what a way to travel, you know. but the car every once in a while start thumping hard because
So it would have shaken whatever goods were in there.
There's no goods in there.
But that's why they weren't using it. It would have beat stuff up that was in there.
Emergency stop or something, the wheel flattened, and the wheel once in a while would start doing this. And but yeah, trains. I still like to travel trains if you can find one. And it's things have changed, Amtrak and all that. It's like Uber. You got to use phones. But anyways,
like Huckleberry Finish, you were.
I like to roam. Your one sister Wendy's in Egypt now, and your dad commented me. I don't know. She reminds me of you, Dan. She just picks up.
I would hear all these stories as a kid. I got in trouble once. You apologized, but you didn't do it. You had visited and told me the story, and I swear you gave me something, but you were on an old train and cut a chunk of the wicker.
I'll do that real quick, because that's a good one. I was traveling to the Illinois Central. Used to have the old Harriman cars. They call them the Iron Horses. They were just steel, heavy-duty cars that they would last hundreds of years, but they were built in like 1925, 1926. They were still in use into the 70s. And anyways, probably late 60s, I'm riding this. They had wicker seats, but they lasted forever. Hard wicker woven. They're on the old railroads would use these. They're very comfortable and they last forever. I was about 13 or 14, and I thought, I knew this was a historic thing, so I took my little pocket knife.
It's a historic thing.
With a fake bone handle, the white ones.
Yeah.
Every kid had one. And I cut a square about this much out of the seat. And I went home and I put in an envelope, the date and all that stuff. I still got it somewhere. And I told his mom about this.
No, you told me about it. Well, you maybe told my mom, but yeah.
I thought you were overhearing that conversation.
No. Yeah. I was probably... Well, there's more to this story. The reason the story came up...
Yeah, anyways, later on, I found out Mickey, at a certain age, cut a piece of his school bus.
It was about 2 days later.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it was 2 days later.
He cut a piece of his school bus to save a school bus. I don't know, the vinyl of
There was no trains, man, so I cut a chunk of school bus seat out as soon as school started. Well, the way that story went, there was a sign in our house for years: keep back of yellow line.
I took that from there. With your mom. We were stopped at the Kankakee Railroad Station, which is it's still there, old-fashioned railroad station, and they had 2 of those signs, and I pulled them off the thing as souvenirs. She brought one to the museum.
So souvenirs means theft of property.
Yeah, that's true. Somebody could have got hurt on the tracks. That's like an emergency.
So it was this beautiful old wood hand-painted sign.
By hand, yeah. They don't do that anymore. But yeah.
And it hung in the house for years as a kid.
One, I think, somewhere.
And you were over, and I'm like, what's the story with the sign? And you told a story, and my mom was like, oh, I didn't know that's where it came from. That story then led into other train stories, such as hopping freight cars and cutting that seat. And I was maybe 9 or 10. So like the very next Monday morning riding the school bus in, I'm like, yeah. And I whacked out a chunk. As soon as I got to my classroom, Michael Shook, please come to the principal's office. Michael Shook, come to the principal. The bus driver sees where every kid sits every day. Wow. So they got up probably to make sure no kids left their bags or books or anything. What the hell? This kid cut a hole in the seat. So you have a pocket knife on you? I'm like, turn my pockets out. There's the little piece of green vinyl in my pocket knife. Yeah, the crazy stories. One more crazy story. We can get back to my world's most uninteresting man. The family. This was a few years ago. For fun, these guys, the family, the kids would build a bonfire because they're kind of out in the way out of suburbia here, and take a propane tank and throw it into the fire to see what happens. Wait a minute. They got a context. Yeah. We all love bombs, bombs. They love bombs like context. We all did as kids. Wasn't that we just throw up. I don't know if we should share this or not. We had some fun on the farm. Period. And if it didn't go off, you'd get a rifle and shoot a hole in it. I can't either confirm nor deny that as well. Man, these guys did more than I did. We'd take the CO2 things and load them with matches, Okay, there's no bomb making stuff. We can't put that on. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I heard all these things. I tried that too. You're vagabonding around, jumping trains. You ever get in trouble? Didn't you one time tell me a story? Your parents found out that you were gone in Southern Illinois from where you lived is 300 miles. I actually ran with a family doing crazy stuff. And what does that mean, ran with a family? Well, hung out with. I don't want to mention their name, in Hazelcrest. How old were you? I was a teen, and we hung out in the freight yards, and we started doing
we started doing stuff on the trains, trying to break into them and crap like that. And actually, the FBI was in on looking. We didn't. Nobody went to jail, but it was. We all got busted. It was pretty embarrassing.
Just screwing around, being idiots.
No, I opened up one car was loaded with tubs of butter, and I remember I kicked the butter out of the. And we had to pay for the damage to these things.
You were a teenager?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't want to do anything to besmirch your reputation or anybody else's.
Well, that's so historic, it goes way back, I guess. And we were all underage, so there was nobody went to jail or whatever. But it was some crazy stuff.
This spirit of wanting to go be adventurous.
Well, the spirit of vandalism, you can say, as a kid. What that word means.
So you at some point decide I gotta do something different, and you decide to join the army.
Well, the thing on that, I wanted to learn to fly, and I'm getting my 20s, and I meet all these people. My son is he's studying economics. He's going to be a lawyer, and I think, damn, I really don't have a career yet. I'm getting my 20s, and I got to have a career, and I wanted to fly, and I think the army at the time, if you could pass all the tests, and it took a long time, you could get in without any kind of college degree and go through the flying program. Mm-hmm. It all depends how many people.
What year was this?
I went in around 81.
Okay.
But it took a couple of years to get to that point. You take the test, the recruiter, and it's interesting because the Harvey recruiting office, when I was 16, how old was I? 15 or 16. When I was 16, the Vietnam War was cranking up. And I grew up in the Audie Murphy movies and all that stuff. I think, I'm going to join the army, Anyways, I went to the recruiting office, and they say, I think, hell, they'll lie about anything if you want to get in bad enough. So they start the paperwork. My parents found out. I found out later on why they said, well, you're too young.
They called your parents or something?
Well, they found out I'm trying to do this. The Vietnam War is just cranking up. And if they didn't do that, I probably wouldn't be here right now. I would have been a perfect cannon fodder. You're 16, 17, mm-hmm. and they're shipping people over to Vietnam, 50-some thousand lives later, American lives. And anyways, they said, well, you can't join, and we understand you're just 16. So I had that spirit in me, like, hey, man, come what may, I want to do this,
Sure.
So after that, I kind of went the long-haired route by the time I'm out of high school.
Is this when you were running dope and got caught with my mother?
Yeah, that's a good one. It wasn't really running dope. I had a job delivering, I'll make it real quick, delivering film for a company that would develop film, a job right out of high school. And it was kind of cool. They give you a car, a little Vega or something. I would drive up to Michigan. And anyways, would drive up to Michigan. I'd bring a little weed along sometimes and sell it to like a gas station attendant, a young guy. Everybody at that point, it's like, oh, you got some weed, We're driving. I brought his mom along. That's before she even married or whatever. She lived down the road, and we kind of hung out together just as friends, nothing really romantic. You want to ride with me up to Michigan? She says, yeah, sure.
Are you my dad?
Huh?
Are you my dad?
No. Anyways, we're driving up there, and I get pulled over for speeding, supposedly. If it wasn't much over the limit. It's evening time, nighttime, dark. Get pulled over, and Michigan trooper puts his flashlight, everything okay? I want to see your license. You're going a little bit over the limit. And I guess a lid, a wrapped up thing, a baggie filled with pot, slid from under the seat to where he could shine a flashlight and see it back there. I think, oh boy, out of the car. Anyways, long story short, we get pulled in. His mom wasn't really arrested. She was detained with me. But both of us spend a night in the county jail up there. I don't want to say which county because this stuff usually goes through the memory hole that far back as far as records. We spent a night in the county jail of a county up in Michigan. Pot was legal at that point in some of the cities, actually, back in the around early 70s in Michigan. But anyways, my brother came and bailed me out the next day. It's kind of embarrassing. And then his mom got out the next day. And Mary was preaching to I guess she had a Bible. She did have a Bible with her, but there was a couple black ladies in her. There wasn't that many in the female section of the jail, and she said she was preaching to these ladies and stuff, so it worked out good from her point of view. and I'm gonna think was a county holding area, so some of these they had some bad hombres in there, and they're waiting for their sentence, so they could go to a real prison. I remember one guy's sitting. I'm talking to somebody in the lockup, and I see a guy over there. He's like playing checkers or chess with somebody, had a bald head and sunglasses on. Looked kind of scared, and I said, "What's that guy?" And he's being tried for murder. Oh, okay, stay away from him. But
did my grandpa ever say anything to you about it? Did he find out?
Your grandpa?
Yeah, my mom's dad.
No, I don't think he found out about that. And but that was something that the family just thought years later, like, what the hell? It was a crazy event.
So there's a gap in here, like, because you started doing some acting stuff. You were in the Blues Brothers movie, which was filmed in like 78, 79, 80?
I don't actually remember.
So that had to be before you left for the Army.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. So you're doing these odd jobs. You're a drug dealer. You're sitting in jail.
I'm not really a drug. I never got into that stuff.
He's a big drug. He's a kingpin. And
I did go down to Colombia. How I met Adriana.
What year was that?
I went down there around 75.
Oh, okay.
And I did want to survey the cocaine scene. What's going on. And,
survey the cocaine scene.
Well, that was the thing. At first it started with pot. Everyone's going down there pot, and then the next step was that's just before.
This was Bogota.
Yeah, this just before it started turning with organized crime getting into that, and I bought some. I tested some, and then I kind of threw it away and
tested. You had little like beakers with labs.
I met people. It's real interesting. I can narrow this down. I met people at the Hotel Takandama. That was the nicest hotel in Bogota at the time. It still might be, and I met these people from Peru, and they see me as a tourist in there. One guy's name was Mario. I think they were brothers, and they say, "So, are you looking for something to buy?" I go, "Yeah, maybe." I went up to their room, and they popped open suitcases. They had rolls, not of pot, like baggies rolled up with coke from Peru. I guess they make it in Peru and sell it. This is before that trade really started, and a really big time. It was going on. It was still under the radar. And so anyways, long story short, I bought a little bag for $30, and this stuff was powerful. I went out, I snorted a bunch of it, and I walked the streets until I came down on this stuff. And then I threw the bag away. I think, what the hell am I actually walked to the airport, which was miles away, the El Dorado airport.
Energized.
There was nothing. That street, it's all buildings now. We go back there, and it was like a 5-mile walk or something, and it was just nothing, just a road going out to the airport. I just walked it off, And long story short, that was my experience. I think I'm not going to get into this thing. I met people selling it. It was just starting, from pot to coke there, in mid 70s. Anyways, fast forward about 20 years later.
Oh, you met Adriana on that trip.
Yeah. I met Adriana. I met her. Then I took a train.
So you're down there. You're partying a little bit, checking out Colombia. Yeah. And you run into a beautiful chick.
I took a flight, a side flight. I want to see something more tropical or whatever, because Bogota is really a big, like a lot of big dirty cities, condensed, a lot of people. So I took a plane to Cartagena, which is that's as far as I'm concerned, a fascinating place to go. The Spanish were there for hundreds of years. They got a gigantic...
Romancing the Stone.
Yeah, they filmed that there. Gigantic castle fortress. This is probably the main place the Spaniards put all their gold before they shipped them back. And this fortress is
That's
huge.
That beautiful fort in that movie where he jumps off the wall and chases the crocodile.
Gigantic fortress. And I met her actually at the church there. It's really weird. That was a church. They claim it's the oldest church this side of the world, the one in the Catholic Church in Cartagena. Yeah, it's 1500s. If it's not the oldest church, it's one of the oldest churches this side of the hemisphere. And I was in there. It was wild. They had a dead saint in a coffin with glass wall on it.
I've seen this in Central and South America.
Yeah, I see a skeleton. It was wild, and I was thinking. Actually, I prayed. I said, God, I'd love to meet a nice woman, you know, please. I believe I'd said that prayer, and that's where I met Adriana, either inside or outside that church. She was with a friend wearing white shorts, and she's a beautiful, beautiful lady. Now she's my age, but she's still beautiful.
But she wasn't to be. You didn't.
Well, I met Adriana. We hung out for a few weeks there, and then she invited me back to Bogota with her family, and so I stayed with her family. And they had kind of a cottage place way out in the boonies, and we spent their 4th of July. I built a hot air balloon. I bought ones. They were using hot air balloons then for entertainment, and their festivities. They just ended all this a few years ago because it would cause fires. Buildings would catch fire. We're driving. I go, what is that? You see a car floating quietly up in the sky.
A car?
They would make a hot air balloon out of paper, colored paper, the shape of a car. Have a burner of just soaked cotton and stuff. And you see, I think this is wild. I bought one that was like a giant pig, and that with weighted things. And I could never get it hot enough to fly properly, but this stuff fascinated me. That's what they did for their holidays. It was all over South America. That's gone now because these things would land somewhere and a house would start on fire. It's actually illegal.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. You know, they did it here in the United States. I talked to an old timer. Our 4th of July years ago, turn of the century or 1920s. They would use hot air balloons, and also they said the fireworks were like it'd be a piece of stick of dynamite. I mean, they had fireworks, whatever.
John Adams talked about that.
Yeah, there's no law.
Aerial displays.
Yeah, you want to set off a bomb, go ahead. It was all fun and legal then.
So you took off, and that relationship ended for a while.
We fell in love, to put it simply, and I came back to the States. We were writing back and forth. And it just kind of faded. You didn't make phone calls then. There's no Facebook. You're writing letters. A few months went by, then half a year went by, and I kind of let the thing just go back. But I knew in my heart, meeting her, then this would make a great wife and mom. And I met her, about 40.
Hold on, we'll come back to that.
Yeah, anyways. So we reunited. I met her on Facebook again. That's how we got back together.
47 years or something later.
That's 47 now, about 42 years later.
So this chick, lovely lady, just spent Christmas with us. He met her in 1975, and then 40 some odd years later, they reunite with the World Wide Web, and now you're...
Yeah. Her husband, they separated about 8 years ago. They had 2 daughters, very, very interesting daughters. One speaks a lot of languages. She met a gringo recently. She'll be living in Washington, D.C. She's back in Paris right now. And anyways, her husband told her about 7 or 8 years ago, I don't want to grow old with you after all these years. That's just putting it like that. But they still have a relationship as friends. They get along. They're separating their properties right now. Her dad was an architect, and he designed the house he didn't build it for him, but they had a house built at the time her dad designed. They're separating those properties, so if she does come here and live with me...
She's an amazing artist.
She was an artist
then. She's a professor there at the university in Bogota. Professor, teacher at the Bogota Javier University there for about 22 years. Just retired a year early for me, to be with me more. And now she's working on having some kind of income if she comes here or whatever. Because her pension she'll be getting there doesn't amount to much here in America. We'll have to show some photos of a couple pieces of her work. The stuff's amazing. We'll come back to her.
Yeah, she's...
So it's like 75, 76. You are... Sorry for you guys viewing. It's cold here in the north, and I see him shivering, so you're going to hear the whir of a electric heater for a moment. So you decide that you are going to head back to the States, and what'd you do then? So it's 75, 76.
Oh, I had my own business doing painting, wallpaper, and that kind of thing.
So you got like a big head, a moppy hippie hair, a van.
Yeah, well, that was part of it. Right in that time zone, something for me was quite interesting.
Alien abduction, anal probe.
No, I know. I as years went by, I found I really love history and military history also. I had an interesting, I'm part German. Now that I found out really not that, actually more Russian than German, but I do, my grandmother was from Germany. I've had an interest back then, the whole thing, Hitler and the World War II. What was this? Who was it? How did it all happen? I took a German class in early 70s, around that time, and I met a young guy in there, pretty smart. He was younger than me, and his dad was had a business in Homewood, and anyways, he through letters and whatnot got to meet Albert Speer.
Oh yeah.
Albert Speer was probably one of the second to Adolf Hitler, almost probably the most important man in the Third Reich. That whole thing.
Just as crazy.
Speer was an artist, an amazing artist and designer. I mean, whatever you see, the books of all these buildings and this whole look of everything they were building, this perfect world, Speer was behind almost all of it. They did the Stadium of Lights where they had 130, one of their rallies before all the war.
He was technically the Minister of Armaments and War Production.
Yes, before that, actually the architect of every visual thing you would see building-wise.
Berthold Conrad Hermann Albert Speer. That's a long
there's
name.
no question. He's the most fascinating. And
just for the record, we're not talking, Dan does not condone or like the Nazis or any of the psychotic shit they did. It was fascinating to him how the world ended up in turmoil.
How did this thing go that far? I mean, they still write hundreds of books on it. I had an interest in it, I'll be honest. You know, who was this individual? How did they get to Germany? I mean, to this day, they come out with a new book. Anyways, long story short, this young fella and we became kind of friends at this German class. This is after I was out of high school and whatnot. I wanted to explore Germany a little bit more and get a handle on German. And he was writing letters back and forth to Speer. And one summer, he got to go over there and visit with him. And they talked for an hour or so. This fellow was a little more educated from me, came from that kind of family, college type at that point. He talked with Speer for a few hours. Well, I got Albert Speer's address in Heidelberg. And I wrote him a short letter. And
what did you tell him?
I just said, you know, I got a German bat. My grandmother's from Germany. I study history. I like history and German history also. And I say, you know, it'd be great to meet you. And I did get a little card back, a letter from him. And he says, he said in the letter, or how did it go? Anyway, he said in the letter, when you're in Heidelberg, you call this number. Because Speer later on became a real hot. Everybody wanted to interview him. He ended up with a girlfriend.
I thought that he got tried at Nuremberg.
He did. He did 20 years in prison.
Oh, he did?
He was the last. No, that was the other guy, the last guy. He did 20 years in Nuremberg. And for the war crimes where Speer was in charge of thousands of actually several million people. And he had an assistant that actually carried this out. He ended up getting executed. And as trial, he says, what about Speer? Speer was the one that just looked over the thing.
He was too connected.
Well, that's part of it. After the war ended in Germany, you get into this, it gets really fascinating. They debriefed Speer for about a week or so, and because we're still fighting Japan. They wanted to know Japan's weaknesses and what, and they debriefed Speer because Speer was in charge of keeping Germany going for the last year when it should have been broken. He kept the factories going when they were bombed out. His planning was just very brilliant. And so he helped with that. I think that helped get him off the, at least give him a stay alive. But Speer's secretary, who was in charge of all the slave labor, he got hung for it. I believe that's how he got hung for it. He even says, hey, what about Speer? But Speer was the one that just put on paper who goes where.
So he writes you back.
He wrote me back. He says, when you're in Heidelberg, call this number, whatnot. And I did. When I got to Germany, I was seeing a German Elke up in northern Germany.
What's a German what?
A German girl, Elke,
Elke.
In northern Germany. At the time, I met her over there. Anyways, long story short on that, Speer said, when I came there, or before I was going to Germany to see Elke, he told me back, he says, I just got out of the hospital with a heart attack, which I found out later he indeed did. That's how he died. England at the time. He said, "Give me a call when you get over there. But I may not be able to talk long, but I will see you. You know." This guy's been interviewed so many times. What was it like? Because he was really Hitler's closest confidant, and because Hitler liked art and whatnot, and Speer, a brilliant mind, he did the kind of art that they liked, that they were building. This everything. Let's face it.
All that Romanesque stuff.
People joined that. Just their weapons, their weaponry and uniforms. I mean, when the Third Reich rolled, they're invading countries with airplanes. People hadn't even seen airplanes. The weapons they had, their tanks, everything, were modeled after so much of their technology, from our machine gun, the M60 machine gun.
Our space program.
Space program of von Braun. He put us on the moon, him and Arthur Rudolph.
Go back, finish this.
Yeah, anyways, so I get to Germany and I call and he says, I can't see you now. But come back in a couple of weeks. And I spent that with Elk up in northern Germany. And so I come back to Heidelberg, and I walked up. I walked up this road. It's snow, and this was a house his father built around when he was born in 1905 up on a hilltop. His father was not an architect, real estate and whatnot, and they owned a lot of property. For that, so he was really an upper class German, and then a professor at an early age in his 30s. Back then, when he got into all that, so it was kind of intimidating. I ring the bell. I go in. I meet him. He had a place this Baroque, like sitting room with all this big dark wood and a chair by a window, a big leather chair where he'd sit and talk to people like this. I sit down and start talking with her. Number one, I just broke the protocols. My Elka, I'd walk into her apartment where she lived in Berlin, and what are you doing with your shoes? Your shoes on? Because they had snow on. It was snow at the time. So I go up there. I enter his place, and he's an old guy. Well, he's like my age. You know, he's an old guy. I thought in my mind he's an old. At 70 years old, you're kind of senile. You know, that was so. This guy was like. Speer was a genius. There's no question about it. And he sits down. Well, I took my these boots off. I had leather boots of snow. I put them in. We're going to go sit down. He says, "You take your boots off. They do that in Japan." I think, oh, okay. You know,
I don't know your customs. The girl yelled at me.
And so I sit down. I'm going to start talking with him. And first thing he does, he looks right at me and starts grilling me. He wants to see who this is. And
it's interesting that somebody that has done all of these things, gone to prison, been party to murdering millions of people.
Well, in a way, he claimed in his book.
Well, let me finish.
Yeah, okay.
But that he still is so interested to talk to some kid from America. Like, was it ego a little bit that no?
The whole world wanted out. He got out of that prison. He made short on money. He made a few $1 million on his books that he wrote. You know. Inside the Third Reich, and then he did another one, Spandau Diaries or something. I read the Inside the Third Reich. It was just fascinating as all heck. And anyways, we sit down, and I didn't know how to. He did say one thing that went over my head.
So what was he asking you? Just like who you are?
He spoke excellent American. You know, most of this guy. He learned American. I don't know if he knew it.
When you say American, you mean English, or you mean like American?
English. Okay. He spoke excellent English.
Like he's talking slang like we do in Chicago.
This guy was, he probably spoke multiple languages. So he spoke. You didn't have to worry about any German. He spoke excellent with a little bit of an accent English.
Did you have? I would have total disdain for this guy. I mean, I understand appreciating the genius of his mind.
Everybody says this. Everybody says these things. But if they were there, growing up in that society, you go back to the whole thing just real quick on the history of Nazism. They never would have had that if it wasn't for the communists. The communists did their mass murdering. We never hear about it. In the 1920s.
Yeah, the Russians killed 20-something million, 100 million.
Absolutely. The Red Terror. Read about the Red Terror.
Yeah.
They destroyed thousands of churches. They crucified priests and whatnot, but not hundreds, thousands. You can read about it, but it's never put out there.
It's just not
communism.
Sexy bit of history.
Yeah, at that point in the late 20s and whatnot, after World War I, Germany's kind of in ruins. Communism is literally taking over Germany. and the early thugs of the third, they were the guys that would get out there in the flesh, go out there, fight and die, kicking ass of the communists. That's how they were street thugs, baby. They come into your country, what is BLM or whoever these groups are. They get on the streets. You saw them, the BLM thing. You know, they come, and if we got to put on helmets and carry nightsticks, we're going to do it in the streets. And that was the thing in the beginning of the Germans. Why the German people, they loved this guy and the whole movement. You've gotten rid of this communist threat. We can go back to Germany, and then but Hitler had plans way beyond taming the communist, and they put in the anti-Semitic thing, which was over the top. Didn't need to ever go that far. That almost turns into another story, but that's how the whole thing began, how Germans, out of patriotism, and then by the time it really got ramped up, Hitler now is in charge of the militaries, the U.S., the German army, which didn't make them Nazis. You had to be in the Nazi party if you were serious, but either way, you're being drafted now. You're being drafted in their militaries, just like any nation does, like we did. So you got millions of people at this point drafted into the army. You got to go. Your leader that everybody elected is Adolf Hitler and company.
And that madman built one of the biggest armies in the world.
The armies were amazing. You just look at the photos.
It dwarfed ours.
My God,
at the time, and he did it all secretly.
They had every trick. That's why I see things going on today. It's more communist oriented, but they used the playbook of the Nazis. They had everything figured out, how to psychologically get people to where one guy with a gun could herd 50 people into a boxcar and take them to Never Never Land, these gulags. They would use all types of psychological trickery, to get people to follow this thing. So that, I call it the Nazi playbook. Werner von Braun, he was in charge of thousands of slaves building these rockets. The horror they were in. There again, he just wrote on a piece of paper, we need, 50 more workers at Peenemünde or whatever it is, rocket plants. And anyways, getting back to talking with Albert Speer, we talked for a while, and he's looking right at me, grilling me. And I think, suddenly I thought I'm going to be talking to some old man. Well, I tell you, it was like this with, boy, was I wrong. This guy spoke English. He's looking at me, who are you? He wanted to know me. He liked meeting these people. He did. I know he said he'd been interviewed so many times. He doesn't like going over what it was like or whatever. He would tell people, it's in my books. Anyways, we're talking about. I say, well, I got a business doing it's crazy. I mentioned wallpaper. They used to call Hitler a paper hanger. He may have done it once in his life or something. But I said, well, I have a business doing wallpaper and remodel and painting, wallpapering in homes and whatnot, my own business. And that almost sounded like, is that a joke? Because they would call Hitler a paper hanger, And
didn't know that.
Yeah, he must have did if he ever did it in his life, because you find out all these bad things, somebody you hate, Anyways, I'm trying to make light conversation. I mentioned about the Russians were acting up again. I mentioned something about the Russians, and this guy's been interviewed for years, his whole life. He thought I might be a little more interesting. I looked back, if I could have approached it, I would have had a lie. I'm going to university studying history, something like that, because they're very class oriented. He could feel this guy's not, he wasn't educated in a certain class. But he said one thing that went over my head, because he knew I liked history and stuff. He says, it went over my head. He says, Daniel is not a very popular name in Germany. He threw that at me. It took me years to figure out what he's saying.
He's talking about Daniel from the Bible,
Jew. A Jewish name.
Yeah.
There are Jewish names in Germany, Joseph, Mary, all these things. They're there. But I years later, I looked it up. Anybody connected, the who's who in the German military and whatnot, you don't see Daniel, They were usually harder names. Felix, it's just all the German names. They were cool names, but more of a harder thing. You don't see Daniel. David, you see a few Davids maybe, but not Daniel. But he was wondering, could this guy be Jewish or something? I don't know,
Yeah, you could have come there to assassinate him. Not that was your intention.
Well, I wondered about that. This guy was at one point,
Somebody had a blaster under his legs pointed at you the whole time.
he was or Israel could have they could have got rid of him, but whatever, everything was smoothed over because there was no security at his house. He just had a spear up on the gates of the they were older gates, and anyways, there was no security. And I'm thinking he comes down the stairs. He threw that at me. You know, it's not a very popular name. Anyways, it was just like he was getting tired, and he had told me before I may not want to talk long. And he says, you know, hey, Mr. Baldwin, I'm an old man. I just want to go upstairs and go back to bed. And I was kind of like, wow.
Party
Anyways,
over.
he was very nice. Yeah, I'm exiting, put on a overcoat and, you know, snowing outside. Nice snow. We were walking up in the hills there overlooking the Neckar River, Heidelberg. And he said, you know, I wish you well. I wish you well in your life. And he just closed the door, went upstairs. I went out and that was it.
That was the end of that. That's
took a picture of the gate or whatever. But
do you still have that photo?
I got a picture of the gate. My friend I met, he was sitting together. Speer that was a year before or so, and so he was in better shape. But Speer ended up with heart trouble, and then like a lot of us do. And then he was with his girlfriend, English lady, and he had a heart attack over there about 3 years later, something like that, over in London, and passed away there. Speer in his one book, which is laughable, he said, I guess he had to do this. The guy was a very smart man. He knew how to play the Nuremberg jury and whatnot. He said, I was shocked to find out what was going on in these camps. And I'm thinking, how could you, oh, come on, that's impossible.
Right.
But he threw that in there.
Right, like you're not in all of these meetings as they're talking about all of these things.
But Hitler kept people in the mode they were used for. He didn't like really mixing them up. And Speer was his artist designer and kept him away from that stuff. But then they found out for a while, they were calling Speer the good Nazi, you know, kind of laughable. And then they said they showed when they were building Auschwitz, where Speer actually did some architectural work, you know, on Auschwitz, which was almost like a city. It's a huge, when they say Auschwitz, it was a giant, millions of people or whatever, huge amounts. And a lot of them were jobbed out for slave laborers and whatnot. But a side note, Werner von Braun was an SS man. That was the real hardcore Nazis, SS officer. They used him in the rocket program, the SS, because it was the most private, the most important thing with their rockets. And von Braun, he had slaves, thousands of slaves working for him in these rocket plants. We hired him after the war. He helped put us on the moon. Yeah. Von Braun was a brilliant, and one other man, Arthur Rudolph, he helped design the actual Saturn rockets that got us to the moon. And after it was over, years later, his pictures there, still at NASA and whatnot, it's just kind of fun. It's just kind of weird. Like, they just discovered then about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Arthur Rudolph, well, he's a Nazi war criminal, so he left the United States. Yeah, we're gonna go after some bad guys after we're done with them, you know. And anyways, it was a privilege to meet him. And I learned a lot. I went down to South America with recently, a couple of years ago, with Adriana, and went to, it was kind of a long flight from Bogota. It was New Year's a few years ago. We went to
Argentina?
We went to Argentina, to Bariloche.
Oh,
Bariloche.
Man, that's where, what's his face hit out, right?
That's where I took a kayak to the Hitler house, they call it down there, and a house is paid for.
But was that where Eichmann hung out too? Is that where they caught him?
That's where it just gets so fascinating that after the war, we had literally hundreds, if not thousands, of Nazis on our payroll, the United States, and what they used them for down there, and it's just so crazy. But I'll spill it out because it's just fiction now, and most people don't want to understand. They never found one scrap of Adolf Hitler, Eva Braun, or Martin Bormann after that thing. When they say Hitler died of the bunker, they even had shows on it where hunting Hitler. And the Russians had his skull, supposedly, and they finally analyzed it with DNA. It was a woman's skull, the skull that they had left of Hitler. But Hitler ended up, along with a lot of the top Nazis in southern Argentina.
You believe that Adolf Hitler left Germany, is what you just said.
They had all the means to get out of there, yeah. Via Some say by submarine, some because they were bringing people over by submarine. That's a fact. There's subs washed up over there in South America, either by sub or one of their planes. And they may have even had exclusionary. The Allies may have given him a go-ahead to do that. It was after the war ended with Germany. He left, and he went via. First, he went to not Spain. Their island. What's that one island?
Oh yeah.
The Germans used it that Spain held.
I can't remember.
It's in the Caribbean island. Their subs went there for during the war using. They were neutral at that time under Franco, supposed to be neutral. But Hitler went there, and then he went either by submarine or by plane, and ended up down in Argentina.
Are you talking about Cuba?
No. There's a Spanish island. People go there. It's a resort, R&R resort.
Okay.
One of the islands, the Canary Islands.
Oh yeah.
The Canaries, and anyways, in South America they know that. In fact, there was in Bariloche via Angostura. It's such a beautiful area. It's just like it just blows your mind. It's all like a ski chalet. All the buildings are made out of wood. Out of these big logs and whatnot, because there's a forest there. We took the tour of the forest. It's a beautiful area. And what happened during that time, supposedly, during the war, a home was built in a very hidden cove of this giant lake that's like a Lake Tahoe type thing, surrounded by snow-capped mountains. And in this little niche, we just found this out about 10 years ago. It became public. You never saw travel shows going to Bariloche or anything. It was just always off the grid of the media. But a lot of our presidents would visit there, and other people would meet there, and that even to this day. Barack Obama's been there, Bill Clinton's been to Bariloche, and then President Eisenhower, possibly to meet with the Nazis running things. Anyways, the house there, it's built in the style that Hitler liked. If you see his thing in Obersalzberg when it existed, but it's wood and stone. It's in this hidden niche. Had to cost a lot of money to build back right around 1940s, and I paddled a canoe and got to go in that place, the Inalco house. It's a little niche on the lake, but they call it Inalco, and that's by via Angostura, this really cool city. It's like something in Aspen, and they don't really ski from there, but it's a city like Aspen, these stone and all the shops and stuff. And I took you can't visit this place publicly. And
how'd you get in there?
They have a caretaker on the property, and it's down in
bullshitted with them. And...
No, I rented a kayak and kayaked up to it, because boat tours will actually go by. In one of the folders of tourist Hitler House, you can rent a boat and they'll take
it. Literally tells you Hitler House?
In an older one. The newer ones didn't say that anymore. They don't like to publicly say this is the Hitler House because they would tear it down, So everybody around there knows all that. And I paddle a canoe to that place, and I get up there and I see the caretaker's house, and I think, well, everything's cool. And then I see there's two bulls, full-size bulls, standing, munching right in front of the house. And I pull up on the shore and I think, oh boy, all this, part of the reason I ended up there, I wanted to visit this place. And I think if I don't get a green light, I'm going to just have to go back on the canoe. So this was their unofficial guards. The bulls roam the property, and they're munching on green. So I'm sitting on a picnic table out by the shore, and I'm thinking if I don't get a green light, I got to get in that canoe and kayak and get out of here. And then I see the bulls just walk in back of these bushes, like looking at me, like they don't care. And I'm thinking, man, that's a green light. That's animal language. They get people that want to visit this place.
Sure.
They're
that's
saying,
a green light. I got the green light.
They went back
Benny
out of the way.
Benny the bull told me it's a go.
Yeah, the bulls, they see it's another tourist or whatever, They don't care. They walk back at some bushes and they're munching back there. I think, hell, I'm going to walk for it. So I walked a few hundred feet and went into the place and took some photos. And
you got into the house?
Oh, yeah.
They had unlocked?
They had a back door, a back window.
So
they had a back window.
You let yourself in through a back window of what potential...
Listen to me, the back window's open with boxes to stand. People visit that place all the time unofficially.
Was it like dilapidated and fallen down?
For being, it's been unused maybe 20 years or something, and so
Was there furniture in it?
Yeah, there were some old chairs and whatnot down by the fireplace, and there was an old mattress up there, and that was probably his room. There was 2 rooms with balconies, and I heard once in reading about Hitler's place, his complex up there on Obersalzberg Mountain. There's still the Kelston house, where it's a big tourist thing that they built. But the place he lived it was blown up after the war because they didn't want it some kind of shrine. But he had a whole complex, a cool, fantastic place to live up there on Obersalzberg Mountain. Anyways, I read once his crapper that he had there. He could open the window and take a dump and look out over fantastic snow-capped mountains of the Alps, you know. And that place was blown up. And I remember reading that, and I walked in the one bathroom. Now, they had mountains snow-capped, but they're not anything like the Alps. They're the smaller Andes, but they do have snow. So I went in, there was a couple of toilets. Looks like the plumbing was a little bit modernized with PVC and stuff. And I looked where the toilet was, and sure enough, the window opened. You could see the mountains from taking a crap. And I think there's no question this was used.
So Dan Baldwin validated the most evil human in the last 200 years' existence by the view from a shitter.
Well, that was part of it. But I did because, luckily, I got to meet Abel Bastille. Abel Bastille is an author who's published, they're paperback books, kind of like your mom makes, published 7 books on what happened in Argentina and the German connection. He did that in the last 20 years. I got to meet him. He was down there at the time, well, he lives down there, and he doesn't speak English at all. Adriana's with me. He says, yeah, I'll meet with you. Luckily, I had Adriana interpret. And I says, well, you pick a place and we'll go to lunch and we'll talk. And he took us to this fantastic big log place overlooking the lake. And I remind you, it's kind of like a Lake Tahoe thing. The lake, I forgot the name of it. And this really cool restaurant, big fireplace and all that. And this is where I guess people have been going the last 30 years, the big wigs. And so I had some kind of hunter's soup dinner, and Abel talked with Adriana for hours about the whole thing. It's so damn fascinating. You just learn. You can't believe these things, but once you know it, you just know it. And he was hired. What went on? Communism was a real threat to the United States after World War II. You can look a lot of this up. Operation Paperclip. We hired hundreds, if not thousands, of Germans, from scientists to goon squads, whatever it took.
What year was this?
Right after World War II.
Okay.
It traversed on. But the thing and a lot of the guys that were wanted, there are a lot of Germans down there already.
Was this the OSS that did this? Or?
Well, you could probably say our CIA, OSS turned into the CIA, and we hired all kinds of Nazis into our intelligence system, with very high positions. Anyways, the job that they were to do down there, and Hitler was in charge of these people, thousands of them, and you had a pecking order, and one of them on the list. Well, anyway, that's another story. Klaus Barbie. What went on? So you have Adolf Hitler in charge of these people, and these are officers. They have sums of money, unlimited sums now with Uncle Sam helping out. Their job was to make sure that no president would be in charge of South America or Central America, and try to find one from World War I. The last one of them was Allende. He was president for a year or so. He was eventually killed. But that was Hitler's job, and all these Nazis working for him to keep the communists out of the countries. Cuba was an exception; it's an island, and that was their job. And it was our money that funded this. And after you put pieces of history together, you can make things. It all makes sense. I read about when they caught Che Guevara down there. Our CIA says, well, we found him, and then they let the local police or whatever kill Che Guevara. Che Guevara went back to Bolivia to bring the revolution there. And the Bolivians really didn't want it per se. And then I read up more about this, and it was actually Klaus Barbie's team that found out. Klaus Barbie was Butcher Leon. He was and he had a group of hitmen down there. They call them the Brides of Death. They had a murder squad, and that's who he came up with a location where.
The Brides of Death.
Yeah, this is real business,
shit.
Man. And then I see later on, sure enough, this whole network of people, that's how they found where Che Guevara was, through the hired Nazis that were on our payroll. And then Che Guevara, they had Bolivians actually pull the trigger on him that were working with our intelligence agency, and they killed Che Guevara to end it once and for all. And but I see there it is, that network of these people. They only really published, this stuff only really seeped in the last 10 years, because most of those people all connected are all dead. So you start finding out the truth of these things.
Let's change gears.
Yeah,
because you could talk for years
anyway,
about
it's a fascinating
cool
subject. You know.
So as you're traveling around, you've got these different passions, hobbies, interests, likes. You have always loved to, in the time that I've known you, kind of like look for the mysteries. People call these things conspiracy theories, etc. But
real quick, we bring up this thing. That term became popular when they, whoever they were, killed JFK, blew his head off in public for the world to see, very well coordinated and whatnot. Many people died just researching it. They have books, one book out, all the people killed around I'm sure they killed the killers of that, loose ends. But that term was floated by, there's so many books and layers of what ifs with President Kennedy being killed. You're a conspiracy theorist, and that term has been interjected into our language. You got a tinfoil hat on, man, conspiracy theory. So it worked very well. I mean, that's what you pay intelligence people to do, to be able to manipulate
misinformation.
Yeah, our payrolls. There's been people that news people and whatnot for the last 30 years, 40 years, they get a stipend of money to slant a story a certain way, you know?
Sure.
And it's just the way things work. But that term, it works good. UFO. UFO means unidentified flying object. Of course those exist. Now, do aliens? That's another story. But when that term UFO suddenly put on the tinfoil hat, you know, the Earth is flat.
Isn't it?
Yeah. That could have been started with Intel, because it's so wacky that it's really a flat Earth. But there's people that believe in that shit.
Did I ever tell you about how Kanan and I one day were listening to some podcast on the road, and that guy Mark Sargent, who is the big guy behind Flat Earth, is doing the podcast, and I'm just like, this guy's an idiot.
Somebody could be Intel community paying,
so
you know.
We're driving, and I'm like, look his website up, and there's a phone number. So I'm like, I called, and I'm like, hey, Mr. Sargent, Mickey Shook, just heard you on a podcast. I'd love to interview you. He calls back, and I didn't answer because I'm like, what the hell am I going to talk about with this guy? He firmly believes the Earth is flat and that we live in like a snow globe. Like, you know, like I can't. So I didn't call him back because I'm like.
Oh, you didn't get a chance to meet him?
Oh, I kind of thinking about it. It was like, I'm going to call him an idiot. Like I can't, like I'm not going to, I probably still could do it, but it's nonsense. Anyway, so 70s.
Yeah, keep it interesting, but getting back on that, yeah, I had a fascination with the whole German thing, the military thing. Who was this guy? Adolf Hitler was, to people, I read recently, somebody called him a man god, and he was at the time.
Have you visited the World War II Museum in New Orleans yet?
No, but I've been into several of them.
That one's really cool. Like, it's not been open that long. We just visited it. My friend Derek, who's went to school for history, he's a city manager, so he works in government, but he, like, you and him could talk for hours. He knows, like, hardware, all the uniform shit, where their movements were all over the world. So we went through there, and he was kind of like a tour guide for all of us.
I dig that era. The movies, I like the old. I don't watch much that's made recently. You know, the movies from the 40s and 50s. That was when they say the greatest generation. I met when I was in Germany. I did 3 years in the army there. I talked to old Germans that were, and they once told me, and it really, forget the Nazis. He just said, after coming out of that alive, nothing in my life was ever to what I experienced. You know, going through that war, regardless of what side you're on. You know, but for them, At one point, they're rolling their tanks, they're taking over the world. The head trip of that whole thing was unbelievable. And we find out just recently, most of them were on meth.
Yeah,
meth was
which
all
is
over the place.
Which is crazy.
Which is crazy. And it starts, you know.
These dudes are just mething out.
How come we never
running.
found that out? They keep information. It's amazing how they can squash certain things. And that they didn't know that after the war.
Right.
Hitler, all these people, maybe millions of soldiers, they sold them in tablets. You get addicted to this stuff.
Well, I know plenty of guys that have deployed in the last 20 years that have been administered things to keep them alert.
I talked to an Army person a few years ago. There's no such thing, combat pills. Are you kidding? And then they finally, some pilots did a friendly fire a few years ago. Our Air Force pilots or NATO pilots, they were up for days on doing these pills or whatever.
Right.
Of course, if it can get just a few more hours of awake time for you, it can turn the difference of a battle.
Sure.
And if you
Change gears.
Let's go back.
So 70s, you're back home, you head north, you go to Germany at some point, you're partying, you're traveling around, you're hanging wallpaper.
Well, yeah, I was for a while, hanging wallpaper, yeah. I did that commercially too a few times.
You started to get into acting.
Yeah, I guess the movies, Hollywood, all that, it fascinated me. I'm still in the Actors Guild. I still pay a card. That was a big thing to get a SAG card. Now it's easier to get SAG and AFTRA merged. AFTRA is the union for TV. And I went out there, and it started. The dream started coming my way. I got a Screen Actors Guild. I was on Unsolved Mysteries.
Ooh.
And that episode is still shown. I still get a residual.
What was the episode?
The Dale.
The Dale.
The Dale was an automobile in the 1970s, a three-wheeled automobile that this person started. This woman started this company to build a car that would go 70 miles an hour, get 70 miles to the gallon, called the Dale. And people were putting down. She had, by this time, $2 or $3 million of down payments.
Okay.
But no car was showing up. So the feds or whatever went to a hangar in Burbank where the company was, and they go look around, and I guess there's workbenches and stuff, and there's a model. They show this in the episode of the Dale. There's the model of the car, and it's just a fiberglass shell. That they open the door, and the doors are put on with house hinges, with door hinges, wooden door hinges. It's a fiberglass door. It's all kind of
fake. It was all fraud, just like that dude with the Rivian or whatever, that guy that just got busted selling that semi-truck that was like electric or hydrogen, and they pushed it down a hill to film the... Remember
I
that?
didn't hear about that.
It just came out. Yeah, the guy's a total crook, made billions.
Well, the Dale possibly started out as a real thing because he had some researchers, but to build an automobile, you need millions to get a production car. So anyways, I got a job. A job. You're going to be a policeman for a night for Unsolved. I go, really? So they gave me a uniform. It barely fit. It was so skin tight. But I thought, that looks the part.
Sounds like a porno. The making of a porno there.
Well, they filmed this kind of documentary style. So they used 16 millimeter, which gives it a documentary look, but still pretty clear film at that point. Everything's done electronically now. And so we go to a house at I forgot what city, where they do the Pasadena, because people rent their houses out a lot of times for some extra money, few grand to use their house. We're going to be catching this Mrs. Carmichael, So me and another officer, we're dressed up kind of like state troopers, and we get there and they go, well, you guys are going to ad lib. That's a part of Unsolved Mysteries to make it look kind of real. You just kind of ad lib things. And here's your gun. My gun is a black rubber pistol, And I think, well, this is kind of cool. Don't worry, it'll be in the shadows. That's, see. So we knock on the door. We're going to go in and look for Mrs. Carmichael. And she's not there, but we're the ones. So they got the cameras going and open the door. Mrs. Carmichael, this one cop goes in before me. He's looking real. Mrs. Carmichael, we got our guns drawn. We go through the house looking, and we go into the bedroom. And these are my speaking lines. We look around, there's like lingerie and some crap laying on a bed. And we start picking up some things. He picks up a pair of like falsies, like a fake tits. And I pick up this thing, it's like a girdle with an ass on it, And he looks at me. I just started laughing. I couldn't do this.
So
straight.
the chick was a dude.
Yes, we'll get into that. Anyway, I picked this thing up, and he goes, "What's that?" I just would break out laughing. And then they said, it looks like one of the producers was Terry Mauer. And they said, it looks like Terry Mauer was here. You know, so I picked it up. It looks like Terry Mauer was here. And then I shot it again, finally serious. "What's that?" I said, "It looks like some kind of padded girdle or something, you know?" And I'm thinking, they'll never use those lines. They used it. So that gave me my Screen Actors Guild card, you know. And it was wild. And I got residuals for that years later. And I still do. It's shown somewhere. That episode was huge. It sold. They showed it.
So the con man was a chick.
An early transgender. Somebody that, they call him a transvestite. Though.
I didn't know if it was just that they were pretending to make so that they couldn't be found.
No, it was really the one in charge of this was a very, and probably tried to start a car industry like this, but turned into a con. She had a couple $1 million, and it was at that turn was a transvest, somebody that really wants to be a woman. This was shown, it's shown to this day. It's interesting and weird. It was shown in they did a follow-up about 3 weeks later. They caught him, and they show the Mrs. Carmichael is actually a man, and they show this long-haired guy there ushering out with a big gut, you know, and a T-shirt or something. And I think, damn. And that led to catching. I think he did a few years, he or she or whatever. But it was one of the more bizarre, fascinating, unsolved mysteries, you know.
So you did that, and then because you meet a few people, then you were able to do some other acting gigs. Like, didn't you do like a Levi's commercial?
Yeah,
or some
I did a Hager Slacks commercial.
Hager Slacks.
Yeah. That was, I made about $7,000 out of that after the residuals came in.
Just showing your butt, walking
Didn't
around
have
in
to
some
talk.
slacks.
It was a great commercial. We filmed it in an old hotel, a big old hotel, where they filmed stuff, had a little stage in it. And we were the young dads. They had a song going, a guys at the beach, and they're showing different Hager.
Yeah, cool khakis.
And they had little girls, ballerina and stuff on a stage, and we're the parents, like with cameras. And I was
I've
one of
got
the
my
parents.
badass Hager
I was
slacks.
wearing the slacks, and if it's a union shoot, you're wearing the product, holding the product, or selling the product, you're in. You know, it's a union deal. So with some residuals, with no lines even said, it was about $7,000. So that's the biggest taste of that. Then I got kind of that whole scene, man.
Wait, you did the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, as an extra.
That was what year? 78?
Yeah, I don't know, somewhere around there. Whenever the movie came out, it's just here or there. Yeah,
You, were,
I was.
you played like a cop or something, didn't you?
Yeah, I was a police officer a couple times in that. I was on the bridge there when they come out of the tunnel. You got to stop it. I'm there for a few
1980.
seconds. Yeah,
So it was probably 79 when it was getting filmed.
something like that.
So
Yeah, I'm there for a few seconds, and then the mall scene. We're running around.
you
the
brought the
scene.
mall up earlier, which was the mall where
Yeah.
they crashed the car, which was the mall you talked about.
A lot of people wanted to be in that. Stephen Bishop, you know, they were stars just to be in it because they knew it was going to be a classic. Actually, I forgot her name, but
Stephen Bishop from the Rat Pack.
no, Stephen Bishop was a musician. He had an actual part in the thing.
But wasn't he from the Rat Pack, right?
No, Stephen Bishop was a folk singer.
Oh, this guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who am I thinking of?
What's that? I don't know. The Rat Packs. It's Sammy Davis, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra. And sometimes the actor guy was considered Rat Pack.
Which guy?
Kennedy's friend, the actor. He was a good English actor. Anyways, without sidetracking, Rat
Yeah.
Pack.
So you lost the taste for being in.
Well, you're such a nobody out there, and I'll be honest. I learned I can't act. I can be me.
Peter Lawford was the guy
Peter
you were
Lawford,
talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Joey Bishop was who I was talking about. I knew
Yeah,
I never. Joey Bishop.
To me, the Rat Pack was three guys.
It was
so,
them right there. That's what they said it was.
Yeah, I guess initially.
Dean Martin, Peter Lawford, Frank Sinatra, Joey Bishop, Sammy Davis, and Angie Dickinson. Ooh, Angie.
Yeah, I didn't know she was. Supposedly, Bogart's wife came up with that term. She says, "You guys look like a damn Rat Pack or something at a casino or whatever."
When did you meet Burns?
We were, me and this fellow from Switzerland, a friend of mine, he was living temporarily or whatever in the United States, and you take any kind of thing around the movies, and this is going to be, we're going to help out on a game show or something like that, moving stuff around. I don't know if we'd even be in it. So we went to these studios, small studios in Hollywood, older studios. This is where I believe George Burns had his, now that I look back, had his show back in the 1950s, Burns and
You guys
Allen
don't know
show.
who George Burns is. He was probably one of the biggest actors for 40 years.
He was huge, and comedian and whatnot. Funny guy with the cigar.
He'd
Anyways,
be like 100, right? 101. Smoked cigars every.
yeah, he was
day.
about 99 at that point, and they would give him $1 million to do Vegas, because he would do Vegas once in a while, just to show up at
Sit on a chair, smoke a cigar, and just
He
tell
lived to be
wisecracks.
100, but then he didn't make it to Vegas. But anyways, a year or so before that, we're walking in the studio. It was a unusual rainy day, damp day in Los Angeles. Just smaller studios, and they got some offices. And I walked by with my friend, and I look at this one office. Sitting in the back of this office, there's kind of a guy out front of a typewriter at the office, and then in the back in the corner, I see a man sitting like this with a cigar, and sitting by a space heater in front. I walk by, go, and it was George Burns in there. And this friend from Switzerland, well, let's go talk to him. I go, well, we shouldn't. We went, knocked on the door. Come on in, fellas. And he's sitting back there. He's got his friend at a typewriter up there, but he's back by in a little chair. I started chatting with him, and I said, interesting. He brings up his wife. He says, yeah, Gracie, I miss her and all that.
Grace Kelly.
Yeah. No, Gracie Allen. Gracie Allen, that was George Burns.
All right.
Grace Kelly, that's a whole different.
I don't know what the hell I'm
She's
saying.
an actress. Anyways, I was really young. The Burns and Allen show goes way back, but it was interesting. He did say, if those who remember or know George Burns, he said, yeah, I go do Vegas. He says, I'll go there and I'll be behind the curtain, and people are waiting, and I'll just blow some cigar smoke. They'll shine the light coming out, and people go crazy. And here he is, George Burns. That was his insignia. I asked him, are you going to do the thing there on your 100th birthday? He says, oh, yeah, he intends to. And that was kind of neat. He's talking about the old days. And it's a legend. This guy's been from the 40s all the way on, working in TV, movies, the whole thing. That was kind of cool, meeting that thing. I like the whole movie thing. And everybody wanted to be an actor or something at some point. And then you find out the reality of that. You got to be able to act and act good if you want to do that. So
Court jester.
I guess.
So sometime around here, you decide, screw it, I'm going to go join the Army and get my pilot dreams fulfilled.
Yeah, the thing with out in L.A., that was after I got out of the military. I did Route 66.
Okay.
A thing like that, and I did want to give it a shot at least and work around the movie industry. But just working around it. I was delivering props for a while, driving a truck, delivering props and on some of these shows. And saw Stallone once. He was filming a movie. I delivered some props, and he's a short guy. I saw him walking around by his truck. They were filming some movie. And you bumped into a few of those people. Roseanne, I saw them leaving their show, her and whatnot. Roseanne, the Roseanne show, and that's going back. Time goes on. But get into these old studios. They had been there for 80, 90 years. They had mattresses. They were giant buildings they bought old mattresses back then when they built these sleeping mattresses, and they would just staple them to the walls.
Just to create soundproofing
Thousands
from
of
the
these
streets?
mattresses, and then they put chicken wire over there. Oh yeah, because it was concrete buildings, and then because they couldn't have planes going over. They're filming a movie. You can't hear honking cars, planes. So that was all dead now. It was fascinating to see the industry when they used film, because now the thing with film, when video came out, they like to shoot a movie on film because film shows life. Video looks like a hollow. You know what video looks like compared to film. But now,
You're saying digital versus actual.
Video was a digital form, but video on its own looked flat. So they would use real film, which is very costly. They would shoot rolls of film over and over to make and develop each one and throw away the ones you don't want. Now they put computers in the last 10, 15 years that can that can do a video shot, go through a computer, it can look exactly, giving that life feeling, the flutter or whatever that the camera does, where it shows life. Because you see video on a big screen, just plain video, and it looks like video. You know, there's a depth that comes in with using film, but that can be duplicated now. So you see a movie now, they don't even have usually the big film things going. It's all done by very advanced digital. And even the slates, where they used to write on a slate, they clack the slate. It's a digital slate. It's just, things have changed like everything else.
Everything changed.
And Hollywood has changed, you know. The old Hollywood that we like, the movies. You'll see, you're watching a movie of all special effects. The person's fighting monsters that don't exist or people that don't exist. And now it's so special effects, you lose the whole thing of it's just fake.
Of acting and...
Yeah, exactly. The whole thing is fake.
It's different, though. People want to be entertained.
Oh, some are really good.
At least people are not like slave labor like
No.
Judy Garland and people like that were getting doped up and just made to be freaking
that's kind of
circus monkeys.
Another tragic story, you know.
Hey, go to your Army career a little bit. Talk about that. So you get your commission.
Oh, I went through Warrant Officer camp, Warrant Officer school at Fort Rucker, Alabama, and graduated, and you become a Wobbly 1, a Warrant Officer 1. Warrant Officer, that's an interesting rank. It was started by Napoleon, from what I understand. You had the officers, back then to be an officer, all the way up to 1900 or so, they came from wealthy families. Officers were the educated people from landed or wealthy people. That's the way armies have been for 1,000 years and whatnot. The rest of the troops, the big center that makes up the army, usually working people or whatever. That's just the way it's been, or a lower education. Warrant officers were something Napoleon created, or at that time, a go-between. And the warrant officers were people more from the working class that could schmooze and be part of the officer corps, but they could get along with they came up kind of through the ranks and whatnot. That's kind of what warrant officer was. It was a great rank. You get officer privileges, but you stay, instead of becoming a lieutenant, captain, colonel, you became a warrant officer 1, 2, 3, 4, then they end up with a 5, master warrant. So it's a great rank to be in. And as an officer, I could have been, my officer evaluation reports weren't that hot, but I went in to learn how to fly. I did that.
Why were they not that hot? Did you get in trouble, or did you just have like kind of the same attitude?
I was probably I don't want to say anti-military. My mind wasn't really, I liked the military, the history of it. I loved aviation. But to be focused, to be regimental, to live that lifestyle, I had more of a bohemian mentality of doing things, So I wasn't the best officer. And
they taught you to fly, though.
Absolutely. I got out and I got a commercial license. I remember going through flight school. A guy came and said, at the end of flight school, you're ready to graduate, and you got the most mind knowledge in your mind. And he dropped by Fort Rucker, and he says, he was from ex-FAA. He says, we'll give you a test. For $50, you come and you take a one-day course, a few hours. Next day, we'll test you. You pass the test, and you got a commercial helicopter license, which to pay for, oh God.
Thousands.
Well, it's around $100,000 or so to get a commercial license, because a commercial license helicopter, you need, I think, 150 hours flight time. So I knew then, man, here's another golden opportunity, your golden.
What was their angle? Just to make $50, or did they want you to be able to? Well,
just to be friendly, and hardly any people showed up, because these guys,
they're just doing it to be cool.
What do you mean, the people doing it, or what?
Yeah.
No, it's if you get out, you got a commercial license. You need that to fly commercially.
But they just came to offer you this thing that they could sell?
They was just one man doing it.
Okay.
And the Army let them. It's just to help you with your aviation
This
career.
is what I didn't hear you. This is when you're getting out, giving you job transition.
Not getting out of the Army, just getting out of flight school at the end of it. And now you're going to go, for me, either Korea or Germany. This was right before that happened. And they said, your mind is more filled with knowledge of flying, and you got the turbine experience. You can leave here with the turbine time and a commercial license. And I talked to other guys, you're not going this? I'm staying in the Army. I'm not going, I'll never need that. Well, a lot of guys did after they get out of the military. They want to fly. They're kind of on the first square. They got all this time, but they don't have a commercial license. A lot of times they got to rent
Means
helicopters.
something in the Army, but not to the general public.
Yeah, well, I figured once you got this, you got it for life. So I took I went to the briefing, the school thing, a 2-hour class. There's like 1,000 questions, okay? I don't want to say anybody did anything wrong, but there was 1,000 questions. And he showed us a slideshow, maybe a couple hundred. We took notes on a slideshow of what's going to be on that test. And I went back to the barracks. We got so much crap going on. I think I was going to study that I didn't have time to study. So next day, you go and take the test. I take the test, and what do you know? Out of 1,000 questions, I think it was out of 1,000 questions,
200 that you maybe had seen.
It seems like I saw all the answers to these questions. That's what it seemed like, you know. And anyways, out of 10, let's say 10 people or so, they didn't even give us a score. They just got to tell you whether they passed or failed. I know I passed. I think the other guys passed. We all passed. And for that, I walked away. That was the most valuable decision that I made because I wanted to fly after I got out.
Which you did for what, oil companies,
yeah,
tour companies?
Petroleum helicopters. It was the company. That's where Chris Christopherson, if you know who he was a captain in Germany and a pilot. And he got out. He wanted to be, the guy was a Rhodes Scholar, probably a genius mind, but he wrote the song. One of his big songs that he sold was Me and Bobby McGee, Janis Joplin. But then the other one, a lot of people don't know, he wrote the song Sunday Morning Coming Down, which Johnny Cash did. Yeah, and to get that song, what happened, and you can read this in Johnny Cash's bio or whatever, I believe he rented a helicopter. I don't think he used a military helicopter. He took a CD, not a CD, but a cassette or whatever, with Sunday Morning Coming Down, found out where Johnny Cash lived. He landed the helicopter unannounced in the backyard, and Ruth Carter said, "Johnny, there's some idiot landed a helicopter in the backyard." She went out to it, or he did, or he put it on idle, came up to the door or whatever, handed him this, and went back. The helicopter took off. And Johnny Cash played it, liked it, and that's why he did the song.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
did you ever meet him?
Did I ever?
Chris?
No. But we talked about him.
He wished me happy birthday once.
Did he really?
I didn't meet him, but him and Tanya Tucker and what's his name? His brother's cousin Eddie.
Oh, really?
Cousin Eddie from Christmas Story Vacation. You just were watching it.
Oh, wow.
What's his name? Quaid. Dennis Quaid and Randy Quaid.
Yeah, Randy Quaid. Yeah, he's
the one that's
he's on the outs, man. With the establishment.
Dennis, Chris, and Tanya. Tanya's son is a friend of mine. So
wow.
On my birthday, we were talking, and he's like, "Hey, tell my friend happy birthday." So they sent a little video.
So you met Dennis Quaid then?
I didn't meet them. They were all together doing music stuff. So they just happened to said happy birthday to me on a video.
Randy's an interesting fellow. He's been through some things where he had to kind of leave the U.S. or whatever, and maybe they took his money. Whatever. It's interesting. So good actor though. I mean, great actor.
You did 7 years in the Army?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you weren't in Germany the whole time, weren't you?
No, it was a year in Korea, then 3 years in Germany. And that was like a luxury tour. Never went in the field or anything, meaning never went camped out. For a while, I had a top floor of a 33rd story apartment building in Augsburg. And I was living like a king. I had a water bed up there and everything. And they don't even know what I didn't ask them to put in because they would have said no. The Germans
How'd you fill it?
Huh?
What'd you do? Like tape a hose around the kitchen?
From the sink. And then when I left that building, I left and stayed there another year, living in a BOQ or off the bay or off the there.
Danny waterbed, huh? Bringing them. German,
oh yeah.
Them German.
What's this Wasser bed? You know, the thing yeah, I was a whore. You know what the heck? And but when I got the water out of there, I didn't have a pump or anything. I put a hose, siphoned it, and I put it over to the balcony.
And just drained.
And I come down, and the water's raining for hours down, and nobody went up and looked what it was. That was the Holiday Inn was below, and like 10 stories up, all the way to 33 stories. I had the top floor. I was living like a king. The post we were at, Field Station Augsburg, was a giant. We call it the elephant cage. It was a humongous 1/8 of a mile listening type device. It's still there and active, I believe. And then you had the skiff where all these interpreters can interpret different languages. It was a top secret listening.
What was your job for there?
We had 3 helicopters that were a backup. We'd fly to radar sites and whatnot. And,
like take technicians out there?
Yeah.
So you were really just ferrying people around.
Yeah, I could tell you an interesting thing now, I guess. It's kind of interesting.
Why now? Was it something you weren't allowed to say before?
Yeah, well, the pilots really didn't need a top secret clearance, but they would occasionally, with that, they could go in. They call it the skiff. This is one at the time one of the most top secret areas. They took information, listening information with different languages, radio things, interpreted, and then this goes into our intelligence file. So the place was top secret inside that actual building, and now. I didn't need a top secret clearance, but they like to give the pilots that. Plus, it's a big badge. I got a TS clearance, And long story short, on that, I'm in there. A pilot. I'm in. Everything's cool, but I did not want that clearance initially. So I'm there almost a year or so.
Why did you not want it? It's because they have to do so much digging.
Because they, excuse me, they send agents. Either FBI agents or people, I think they're FBI people. They send them to your high school and whatnot, asking everybody about this character, And I didn't have any kind of police record, but I don't know. The marijuana thing was, it was pretty big at the time. And Dan Baldwin, I meet people now. They say you're the one that interested. I went to a thing the other day. What do they call it? Reunion? Oh, Dan Baldwin, you're the one that introduced me to marijuana. I go, I don't want to be proud of that.
Try this, kid.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be proud of that. Oh, somebody would have learned anyway. Don't worry about it. But anyways, I didn't want that. Going to Germany, I didn't need it. When I found out what it was, you didn't have to have it. Anyways, I met people, enlisted people being kicked out because they found a lie that the recruiters had. The recruiters would do any kind of lie to get you in. That the recruiters helped them lie, and then they get thrown out. I met a girl at Augsburg. She was being thrown out, just an enlisted gal, meaning, she just a regular job, lower, not an officer. She's getting kicked out because they found she put some kind of lie, and the recruiter probably helped her do it. So they find something in your past, you can be out. And here am I. I'm an officer. I'm a pilot. Everything's cool. I don't have to have this top secret clearance.
So you just don't want to rock the boat?
That's exactly the term I'd use. I don't want to rock any boats. So I get a call once from the S2, whoever they handle security there at the field station, and they go, Dan, you don't have a top secret clearance. I go, yeah, I guess I just didn't need one. It's okay. He says, well, here's the time now. You can finally get one. And I think, gulp. How am I going to get out of this one, And anyways, he puts the paperwork in front of me, and I start looking at some of the paperwork. I just start looking at this stuff. It's got questions. Have you ever done this kind of drug? Have you done, this is the U.S. government, it's not unusual. Have you ever done that kind of drug? Have you ever had a homosexual encounter? I mean, they're asking everything. Have you ever had weird sex? I mean, they're asking everything in this. And
they really said, have you ever had weird sex?
No, I didn't say weird. I'm saying that, but
Okay.
but it asks about your sex life, everything. They want to know if there could be something that could bother you. And there were a couple gay guys working for intelligence.
Like be used to get information out of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And plus, I just honestly, I didn't want people going to my alma mater of high school asking around, because I was I want to be a party animal. I wasn't anybody in high school. That's the way I found I could get chicks and stuff. Hey, man, he's got some good weed or whatever. Got friends with the jocks and stuff.
You guys are starting to notice a pattern here, I think.
Anyways, I look at the end of this thing, and it has to have my signature. You check all these, and then I have to sign. I go, you mean I have to sign for this to do the background check, right? He goes, oh, yeah. And I'm thinking, man, that's why I love America. I got to give them permission to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
I said, I don't think I want this. And it's like, I had to come up with, I don't want them spending over $100,000, doing this. I don't think it's unnecessary to waste our money and whatnot. I don't think
So
I
you
need
put it off on the moral.
I had to find something, come up with some kind of excuse, you know? And anyway, that started kind of like, you know, there was a little bit of hush, hush. Why doesn't he want it? And it was kind of worked in my favor. He goes, the guy, he could be CIA or something, because when you work for, they actually thought that.
So then they don't think you're a spook. You're just hiding weed.
Yeah, they think, exactly. They think, why doesn't he want this? He might.
So people probably treated you different.
They did it. It was like a thing of respect. You know, Baldwin, he's a little bit out there, but yeah, you know, the guy could be working for, you know who or whatever. So cool, because they'll test people that way by putting plants in and whatnot. Actually, when I went through boot camp, I was the oldest guy in the training. I was 27, 28. Most of the guys are 18. I looked young. I was in shape, so I could kind of keep up with them. But I remember I had two black they were characters, man. Sergeant Jackson, who was in Nam, he didn't talk much. These are some hard-ass dudes. And the other sergeant was from Jamaica. These guys were some characters. They were some badass dudes at Fort Jackson, I'm telling you. Anyways, I got called in once to their office. Both of them were there. Not Sergeant Carter. What the one guy's up? He was a built-up small Jamaican guy. They were characters. And they called me in there in boot camp, because most of the guys are younger, and they could see I kind of knew a little bit more brains of what's going on, although it was very tough. And he says, Baldwin, who are you working for? What are you doing here? I told him I was going through for a flight school. Not many people would go through boot camp and then go to flight school. It's kind of rare, but my recruiters helped me through Harvey, Illinois to get that position after a bunch of testing. So I knew some of the terms. CID, that was CID was the intelligence of the Army or whatever. And I just mumbled that. Oh, you ever hear of CID? They look at CID. Oh, okay. They think this guy could be spying. He goes, well, how are we doing there, Mr. Yeah, how are we doing? Because they went, you got to check the drill sergeants.
So you lied and bluffed.
No, I bluffed the thing like I could be somebody, and you're there monitoring. I go, well, all I can say, you guys are doing a good job. What can I say? You know, ain't nothing.
You're
wrong.
probably not much younger than them. They were probably like,
right,
what?
Exactly.
They're probably 30 something.
Yeah, exactly. And they couldn't figure out what I'm doing there. But like I say, not many people were going from high. They call it high school to flight school.
And in those years, the Army was really kind of. It wasn't like through the 2000s where it was enlist. It was kind of on the decline in the 80s, right after the.
But they don't need that many people. That's why. In the pilot thing, now you got to have at least an associate degree.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I had a thing growing up. Dad was a working man, but a skilled one, and made a great living out of it. And then the next nicer community was Potawatomi Hills. The Twin Creeks was nice, but Pot Hills, actually named after the Potawatomi Indians. I think they buried them there. But that's where the college kids went. And I always had kind of a thing. The college kids kind of irritated me, you know, and like better than other people or whatever, the class thing. And I really feel bad. I wish I had some great college. My flight school a year in there was, I'd have to say, my college trade equivalent and getting a commercial pilot's license. And I do kind of miss that, but I was kind of more of the working man mentality. And yeah, anyways, that's how that ended up. Where were we at?
So you get out, and then you did some stuff with Hollywood, but then you went back and started flying
Well,
again.
the flying, they didn't need pilots offshore. They didn't need pilots a lot. There was still a flood of the Vietnam pilots. That started dying out, and
So-
then finally I get in. It was hard to get into PHI, petroleum helicopters.
Okay.
That's really the premier. I should have never quit them. They had a strike and I quit, and it's a great company. They did go bankrupt, but that's a different story. It's because it's so anything airline. It's a small profit margin. Aircraft are so expensive, helicopters especially, to maintain. Everything is double the price of helicopters. But PHI was a great company. That's Chris Christopherson worked for them for. Did I mention that for? The guy was a Rhodes Scholar also. There were stories of him. You know, people that remember him. He didn't work that long for him. he said he was depressed doing flying helicopters. He wanted to go on to bigger, better things than he did. But yeah, that's kind of some of the things there.
When did you do the EMS stuff? You were flying Flight for Life choppers for a while too.
PHI, the good thing, it was another stepping stone. They had branches. They were in different countries. They also had EMS. They still exist. Petroleum Helicopters Incorporated. They changed their name not just to PHI. They also have a EMS branch, Emergency Medical Service branch, and that's how I cut my teeth on that. I'm working offshore. Then I had some offshore experience in the smaller helicopters, which small turbine helicopters. And I had about a year experience of that, and I found an opening I could get in up in Wisconsin, and that's
Appleton?
Appleton, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I thought so.
Interesting area.
Got a friend up there.
The paper mill. That was the paper. Still is center of America along the rivers there, and it was awesome. It was just some dreams materialized. In Germany, I was a few years before that. I'm bumming around Germany staying at youth hostels, and I'm staying at a castle. One of them was a castle right on the Rhine River. Full moon was out. You open the door. I was 26 at the time. I think the last year you could use the youth hostel network as the youth. And the window was open, a full moon over the Rhine. This castle way up on the mountains on the Rhine. I think, what a view from this place. It was incredible. You could stay there for $10 a night or something, and you're up in this castle. A few years later, me and another fellow were flying a UH-1 helicopter. I'm a Army officer flying down. I'm flying. God, I think that's the castle. I think it could have been in Mainz, in the city. This big castle up there. That's the castle. I was looking out the window at this moonlight thing over the Rhine River. And I'm flying a helicopter down. And then we landed. I was always fascinated. Neuschwanstein. That's the fairyland castle down there in Fusten in southern Germany. And I drove down there. This is after I'm stationed in Augsburg, Germany, which is about the southernmost post you could be at. And anyways, that was like an answered prayer. I actually put that when I was leaving flight school, graduated. Anyways, I put a prayer in a Bible or whatever at a church. I'd like to be stationed at the most southern place in Germany.
Defaced a Bible by writing.
No, I wrote a note in there. I wrote a prayer note in there.
I'm just kidding.
I put a prayer note in there, and I found out after a year in Korea, I'm going to Fort Hood, which I was thinking,
where my brother was at.
Yeah, I mean that's. I know that area. It's just desert. It's just a rough place. I think, man, I got to get out of this. And I think I put Germany, and I put in this Bible at a church. I want to be in the most southern part of Germany, wherever I can go. And I ended up there in Augsburg, Germany. Out of any place, probably 20 different bases.
That's cool.
There was one other base, technically an army base, small, but it was a very small type thing. Augsburg was a real base. That was the field station. It was fascinating. The history around there, the German bases, the barracks were incredible that the Germans had built. 3-foot thick walls, steam heat, the guard shacks of these old things. This is where the German military, for Germans, was like a way of life. From World War I, II, it was literally a part of their society, and it was a way of life for them. But I remember the guard shack, these castle-like structures of their barracks that they built in the 1920s and whatnot, or before, were like 2 or 3 foot walls, steam heated. You go from an icy winter outside, and you go inside, and these buildings were all just nice and warm, entire barracks. I remember the guard shack, they'd have concrete guard shacks. The Germans see these old movies, they're pulling up, there's the guards. They had a little radiator where the guard could stand in there in winter, because they have some harsh winters. They had a little radiator down there so the guard could be in this concrete guard shack and heat his feet. He's on for 8-hour shift or whatever. So it was really fascinating, the Germans, the way they build their weapons, their building, everything. I kind of love it. The German thing. There's something about the place. I really it was incredible. It's incredible. Their mentality, their brilliance. I hate to say, they were just they lacked something. I mean, they had something as far as
empathy, maybe
something like that. Something was missing.
Kindness.
Yeah, something was. There was a cold side to them. My grandmother was from Germany, very loving lady from northern Germany. It was really incredible. I got to visit Germany, and it's an incredible place. it's an incredible place. It's beautiful. Europe's an incredible place. Whatever your thing is, whatever country, whether you're Italian or whatever, is fascinating.
So you did all these different flight jobs, like you did tours of the Grand Canyon, and
yeah, I came home and I flew because of my Army training. I got to fly the Grand Canyon in the most luxurious helicopters for what's their name, helicopter company. Oh, whatever the case. They had the final evolution of the A-Star. It's a real squat body, a pilot and 8 passengers, so 9 people. And you can program whatever music you want and play it in your little iPad thing. I'd put all the songs I want. I wonder how they got along with that, because they would make videos of it. They knew whoever, because there's the musical unions, so they were probably paying the right people. It's not Las Vegas. The company was based out of Vegas. Maverick helicopter. But it was incredible flying for them for a season.
Coming through the beauty of that gorge is amazing.
You'd fly your own route. You'd stay on their route, but I'd fly the one route out where you're kind of low over grass, manzanita. It's kind of like the dried wood, you know. And there was a trough, kind of where you enter the Grand Canyon, a trough, a dried up creek bed that's kind of shaped like this, so you could get the helicopter really low. So I'd be talking, I would get that thing as low as possible, talking, "You guys ready to see the Grand Canyon?" You know, after about 5 minutes out of the base there, you'd have 8 other people. It's all being recorded. You got some music on, whatever you dig. I had one song, the Scorpion song on there. "You all ready to see the Grand Canyon?" "Yes, we are." And all of a sudden, I tell you, boom!
You just
fly right over, and you see 1,000 feet down, and you'd hear people go like that. And yeah,
that's cool.
That was incredible flying there. Then I got a side job. I flew down there in Sedona, another beautiful place. They had one aircraft station down there. They don't anymore. Maverick did. And pilot, 7 passengers. I flew a few weddings through. You'd go into this beautiful valley, hidden valley. And you'd fly the helicopter. I'm not joking. You would fly the helicopter. Let's say it's about 50 feet wide, crack like that in a pass. You would fly through there. The blades, well, you'd have about 10 feet on each side of the blade. 15 feet. Anyways, at that point, I'd go, "Okay, everybody, let's settle down. We got to go through this pass." And you'd flying through. You got 7, 8 people on board, whatever music playing. And you're going into this valley, but at this point, you're going through this pass.
You would fly with 10 or 15 feet on either side of the rotor blades?
Okay, maybe more, it could have been 30 feet on each side.
Whatever, but it's tight.
You just got to do your job and I just say, "Settle down, we got to get through this pass." I said, as we're going through there, you'd see sheer rocks on each side. I go, "Well, don't rock this thing. We wouldn't want to scratch the walls or anything," and I'd get in trouble. And then people look at each other. I mean, you just bump those walls, baby. It's curtains.
Yeah, you'd have blown the rotors up.
And you'd fly through that into Hidden Valley, and it's just this beautiful green valley and whatnot. It was like fantasy job, you know. It was really a fantasy. You know, they would buy these helicopters, Maverick, out of Las Vegas. That's where they're based. Rip out the insides and spend they claimed, and I could believe it, around $1 million on the interior.
Just to make it super nice.
And anything aviation, it's couches are like $100,000 on a little jet or something. They all got to be made to this special specifications. So they were really luxury aircraft, and it was a gas just flying through there. You know, a few people got married. We were going through Hidden Valley there. I guess they call it Hidden Valley. This valley in there, and no, it was a gas. They're saying their vows on the helicopter, and you know, it was really something.
What would you change in any of the stuff you've done? Anything? Would you go back and change anything? Is there a spot you'd go back and be like, "Shit, I shouldn't have"?
I don't know. I wish I missed. I wish I had some kids. I do miss. I've wanted to, believe it or not. I just was doing too much crazy stuff. I probably would have made an unfaithful husband back then too.
Oh, you think?
Adriana, I would have, I met her down in Colombia, and we spent a couple months. It was just, you know, I intended to do that, but I got back here, and it's just writing letters. You didn't make phone calls back then, and I just kind of let it slide. But we got reunited after 40 years. Yeah, it's really.
So making babies, you would have made some babies.
Oh, yeah, I miss that. I really do.
You never wanted to be tied down, man. Anytime.
I know, that was a problem. And infidelity would have been a problem, too. I was a horn dog, whatever you want to call it, you know.
horn dog.
whatever they call it, you know.
You, you got into that fun photography too for a while. Those sensual nudes.
I was doing that even after my operation.
So he would take these sensual nude photographs. Where'd you find these chicks? Get your notebooks out, boys.
People would wonder how can women. I would get some young ladies, you know, even I'm older. They would a few of them would go to a private place out in the woods or something.
Just go with you.
Something. Well, you know they usually people have kind of those feelers out there. They could kind of feel if something's not right, but there can be people that are, I guess, a few psychopaths that can fool people. You know, male or
you still
female.
got the website up with these photos?
There's some on some website I had on there. I got out of there. It's really Christian beliefs and stuff. Even after I had
God made butt cheeks, brother. God made butt cheeks.
Don't I know? But to say God is okay with this, you know, lust. Let's face it. Well, I would do drawings also and mix that with the photography. The come on was I'm going to do drawings, but maybe throw some photos in. Like I'm an artist. But let's face it, it can turn. So is Hugh Hefner, an artist of nudes, but it turned into part of it was a lust thing. And but I met some nice girls that in the mind of the average person, or in some countries, any woman that would do that is a slut or whatever.
I didn't say that.
I'm saying that the general thinking of a lot of people. But I think it was rare a few times. I never did anything. Although these girls I met at the nudist camp there in Indiana.
Nudist camp.
Yeah.
I forgot about you in the nudist camps.
They had some in Indiana. But
do you have an approximate address of this place?
It was Naked City. That whole thing is just unbelievable. Naked City. Then there's the Ponderosa with Ben and Cart. That's still there.
I forgot about all your nudist camp stuff.
Yeah, I know. That's.
Do you guys see why I wanted him to talk with you? So all these travels throughout the life, what are some things you've learned that are valuable for people?
Well, thing in Germany, you didn't have to go to a nudist camp. When I was there, at least, you go to the river. They had certain areas where there's nudes. You could swim nude. It was just the Germans. They're really interesting. They've been in the nudist thing for maybe forever, but it kind of goes back maybe their pagan roots or something. But they had FKK, free body culture, I guess, back in the 1900s. And
what's
another
FKK?
Thing, it was a fry something or other. It meant free body culture in German.
Free those titties.
Yeah, and that goes. Oh yeah,
they were. They were. It was just in their DNA. I loved it over there then. I like that whole thing. Yeah, I remember being at the beach with you once, and you had your aviators on and some Speedos.
Yeah, Speedos. Yeah,
yeah, you
Europeans wear that crap.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It looks pretty gross now. I like good old boxers.
Some Speedos. We want to get you some Speedos for a thumbnail for this video.
Yeah, over in Europe, you'd see some old guys with something and like, please, you know, if you don't have it, don't show it. If it shouldn't be shown, you know.
I like
some
it.
of those nudist places, it's better to.
So I asked you some things you learned, and you brought up dudes in Speedos.
You brought it up. You said the Speedos.
Yeah, it's true. I did bring it up. What's some stuff that you've learned throughout the 70-ish years that you've been?
I was raised, I'll bring the Bible into it. Christian. My dad was a really godly man, and I grew up in a great home. My dad, I get teary. I'm just thinking about him. He's just a wonderful person.
Yeah, he passed 5 years ago,
something
maybe?
like that. I can't remember the actual year, but I was a son of a bitch.
You weren't.
No, I'm telling you, my parents, the way I treated them, you know, my parents were so wonderful. I grew up in a little Baptist church. Dad was kind of not a pastor, but he was the number 2 man, Sunday school superintendent. But he'd get this little church warmed up and handed over to the pastor. I grew up in that atmosphere, and I was a believer back then. But at the point, what they're preaching about sin, and as a kid, what are they talking about? It's like, why is this thing? And I didn't really know what it was, but they said stay away from it. So I just like to do bad things. It was in my nature.
Bad is subjective, but I'm listening.
There were times my dad, you know, he whipped us when I was a kid, and then I got to a certain age, he didn't want to do it anymore. I need the shit kicked out of me. I'm telling you, I look back, I wish I had somebody, the kids that I messed around with, I remember their dad, he ended up committing suicide. I went over there, I won't say their name, and the town I grew up in.
I remember you telling me about them before.
I went to pound on the door once to talk to him, and I heard his dad whipping the kid, and the kid was like crying, and then just went silent, and he kept whipping. I think the dad was, I guess, kind of a sadist, on the kids, and I hung around with them. We'd get in trouble, do crazy shit together, and I liked. I saw this thing on the television a while ago, and it was supposed to say, "What's happening to the youth today? What's happening to the youth?" This is 5 or 10 years ago. What's going wrong with the youth? And it showed like 3 kids, and they're in a house being built, and someone's got a video camera, and they're upstairs and they're kicking the drywall. Like, I think, big deal. Everybody did that shit,
Right.
tearing up a house, kicking the drywall through.
So just so I'm understanding, they showed some kids doing some vandalizing,
Yeah.
and you're saying that a lot of young kids, yeah, I'm sure.
I hopefully never did anything. We burned down a shack, a small barn once.
You just admitted to arson.
Then I find out the people that own this farm were like kind of almost neighbors of where I lived around, that were owners of the shack.
You burnt down a shed?
Yeah, it was the fire department. Sure enough, we showed up to see it going on.
Always happens, man. That's why they scan the crowd, because the arsonists
Yeah.
want to see their
heck yeah.
deeds.
Yeah.
How old were you? 30, 40?
No, it was a high school.
I'm just
I
kidding.
could have been a freshman, junior, something like that in high school, hanging around with some people. The guy I did that with, he's deceased now. In fact, some of these people are. You know how it goes, man.
Yeah.
Tommy knows a bunch of his friends. They're dead
seems
already.
like I bury people every couple of months these days.
You get off the wild crowd. It's exciting, the wild crowd. Let's just put it simple. The whole thing, sin, whatever. Being straight-laced, there's a boredom to it, but it's really the best way to go in the big picture.
Well,
of
I
things.
think it depends. I think, again, that is subjective. I think that
It
organized,
is.
I'm going to put my 2 cents in, organized religion is a...
I know, you can turn it into,
I'm
this
just
is
going to
true.
say, I think that, and there's a lot of people that view our stuff that don't agree with what I'm about to say. It is a fear-based system that instills in young
can be.
people a fear that parents have because they are scared of damnation, which, if you want to believe what's in
Yeah.
a book that was written by man, go ahead. And I have some firm feelings about it based on my upbringing, which I won't share here.
Yeah, we don't have to get a huge discussion, but when you look at the historical context, mankind throughout the ages, try to look at, I know you love history, the big historical view, mankind with all these groups, religions, different kinds have always existed, so Christianity...
And usually there's not a lot of good attached to the Crusades were not good for anybody.
No, that was official. That's when religion becomes official.
Right.
Now you go to South America, where I've been numerous times, and Catholicism is still very powerful. It's still the only show in town.
Yeah.
That's the thing about the United States when we were formed: freedom of religion. You see Catholic churches all over, but they don't run the country. In
Right.
fact, when JFK was elected, some people said, "Wait a second, he's the first Catholic," and he even said when it was inauguration or early on, he says, "Don't worry, the Catholic Church is not going to be running the White House." He made that clear, and he's a lot of people's favorite president. When you look back, what happened after him, something happened in the United States where, if there was a dark side trying to take over, that was the big move to get rid of him. One of the things JFK did, just in a nutshell, there's about 4 groups that would have wanted to whack him. And that's, so we can start out with he said, "I'm going to smash the CIA into 1,000 pieces." Mm-hmm. That right there could get you killed.
Right.
The other things that he was doing was, God, talking to you, I forget the different things. Oh, shit. That was the biggest one. He's going to end the CIA. Oh, yeah, I know what it was. You see him in a short thing with Howard Cosell, not Howard Cosell, one of the news people. He's in this 2-minute interview. He says, "We're not going to Vietnam." Mm-hmm. He says, "That is a waste. There's no reason we should be there. We're not going to Vietnam." That was, I believe, the year that he was killed.
So you got the industrial war complex.
Yeah, we were planning on Vietnam for years. It's going to happen. That could have got him. There's one more I forgot, but the last one is very interesting, and people that are really into the layers of history, Israel. Israel was building a nuclear reactor, the Dimona reactor at the time. Their UN charter and whatnot, they were not to be a nuclear power. Kennedy said that place has to be audited. That place has to be audited. Meaning we have to go check that this doesn't take place. The world doesn't want, we want to keep nuclear powers to 2 or 3 countries, whatever it was. We don't want them to have nuclear power. That was either the year he died or whatever. And one of the things that could have went down that way is because the current prime minister of Israel quit. Now, he would have the power, if you believe the way their government is in their secret police is set up. He could have gave the order to kill Kennedy, and then he quit. The timeline fits that. I forgot which was it, Perez. I forgot who it was. Anyways, that timeline fits, and then Kennedy is killed, whacked, whatever, and then they went ahead with the Dimona reactor. They got their nuclear power, a lot of nuclear weapons and all that. That changed. So there's 3 things. There's one more. Oh yeah, the mob put in. Mm-hmm. So you could name 4 different groups separately would like to see him dead. Powerful groups.
Well, him and his brother were after the mob big time.
Yeah, and one of those mob guys said, "I'm going to get the." How did he say it? He says, "I'm going to get the." I'll get his. Whatever, I think it was the Louisiana mob guy, made up a statement, I'm going to get the head, I'll get the tail to get the head of the snake, something like that, meaning Bobby Kennedy, whatever. So there's 4 groups, because, Bobby Kennedy, who was this young guy, he's actually, what's the thing of law? He was, Bob Kennedy was, his one brother's president.
Yeah.
Bobby Kennedy was secretary of, what is the law?
The Attorney General.
Attorney General, yeah. And he was going after the mob for real. And now, wait a second. They helped him get elected. I mean, that's almost a known fact. Right here in Chicago, was it Banana? Not Banana. Whoever was the head mob guy got the votes. Were going to be close with Nixon, and he got Chicago to vote positively, clinch JFK getting elected. So anyway, that was there. So all these possibilities tie in. They could have worked together, who knows? But they pretty much know that was a professional thing.
What steered you down this? What made you think of JFK?
Well, we were talking about that era and what happened, and that changed America drastically. And the more you find out about it, things go on in all governments where lies can be used. And once they agree on a lie, especially a big government, you never backtrack on it. You have to keep that lie going. You can't say we lied about this. We're telling you the truth now, because the other things are suspect. This is people control. You know, there's the whole. You got the top psychologists and stuff to manage the society. And I mentioned the CIA. You need groups like that, of course. The FBI. You need groups like that. You know, I'm not saying anything really against them, but they can go rogue. They can get people in those secret groups that don't have the best interests of the country. And those 2 organizations, the CIA, FBI of late, right now we know they're kind of in the camp of the Democrats, you know. Actually, both sides anymore. It's money and power that controls really the USA. And we could set this whole other subject, who's running things. But this stemmed from, we're talking about that time era and whatnot, and Israel, and what got Kennedy killed. And many people connected, unfortunately, were rubbed out that knew too much, or, you know, there's a book on just the people that died around that. So they got rid of loose ends.
It seems like for you, everything always comes back to these the investigations.
I like to know how the world works.
Yeah.
And the more you scrape it, the more you scrape off layers of what goes on, the more you find out you don't know the true story. Somebody once told me, they put it really nice. They go, Dan, you can chase these conspiracies all you want, but ultimately you come back the real conspiracy of all. And what's that? The devil, Satan. Usually somehow they're the one manipulating, the father of lies. The Bible calls him the father of lies. He manipulates these things, and they lie at the highest level, probably of all governments. But when lies are used to run the government, which I believe we're at now, you've went too far. But governments, that's the world. That's disinformation. The Chinese says, deception is the rule of war thousands of years ago to win the battles.
Sure.
Winston Churchill says we're going to take truth and wrap her in a guardian of lies. So some quote like that. And that's how we won World War II. Us and the Russians. Really, without the Russians, we would have certainly lost. So I heard a figure just the other day. The Germans, out of every soldier that fought and died, it was like 8 of them were on the Russian front, and about 2 of them, every 10, died on the other. They had their whole military there, and luckily, if it wasn't for Russia, they would have certainly taken over the globe. They were close to it. But the Russians, they rather fight to the death, burn their own cities than give them to the Nazis. They were some tough people, and they did.
Millions of them died.
Millions of people. And they got caught by General Winter, the Russians call it. They got stranded there. 100-some thousand guys. It's unbelievable. You see the movies of them going in, and they're in movies like movie stars. They're in these tanks, and some of them would grow their hair long, shaved, and they're suntan, laying around in the sun, and on their way into Russia. It's a cakewalk, man. Villages burning them down, and we're going all the way to Moscow. And they got trapped there in the winter, one of their harshest winters. Mm-hmm. Same thing, Napoleon. And they froze by the thousands, men freezing.
Battle of Stalingrad, right?
Yeah. And then the ones that turned themselves in, only a few came back alive. I had an uncle, actually. Uncle Hans was a Russian prisoner.
Hans.
I never met him or anything in Germany. We visited his grave.
Hans.
And they got their butt whipped there in Germany. What a way to die! There's pictures of soldiers
frozen behind their
icicles, just frozen dead. Horrible. But they went in. They were the finest army in the world, and it was. The machines, nobody saw tanks like that. Tanks they had, machinery. It was a cakewalk going in. And part of the strategy was to pull back, just burn the city down or whatever, pull back. And then they had our help in the West helping the Stalin and all that stuff. It's interesting, aviation, planes that Stalin had captured Me-109s, that's kind of the fighter. 33,000 of those things were built. It's one of the most produced planes in the world, that fighter plane.
Still, people model stunt planes and shit after the Messerschmitts.
Yeah. Well, the 109, interesting factoid about Israel, when they were fighting for their existence, Stalin had a bunch of, because Stalin, communism and all that, there's a link there with Israel. Stalin loaned some captured Me-109s to Israel when they were fighting their war in 47 or whatever. And there are, sure enough, pictures of, they never crowed about that. There's pictures of Me-1 with the Star of David on the fin, a Nazi plane just used a few years before fighting against the Arabs and whatnot.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and whatever you got. So Uncle Joe Stalin, so I'm part Russian. I did one of those DNA checks, and I had actually more Russian, not all that much German. Actually, French and Polish, a big chunk of Polish. But my grandmother was German, so I do have that, at least a quarter there. But a lot of Russian, 10% Nordic, and that's from the Russians that came over, the so-called White Russians or whatever, the ones that came over the bridge. They were their original Russians. You see these people, they look so white, Putin and all that, and white, blue eyes.
Places you've been that people need to go before they die.
Oh, well, wow. Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up. I didn't see the whole world, but I've been in Asia, a year in Korea and whatnot, and Koreans are really, really fine people, and that was wonderful to go over there to have that experience, and then from there to Europe, been to South America all the way down, because you just go to Colombia or whatever in South America, but I went all the way down to Argentina. The furthest, that's a great place to visit. It's just, it's uncanny. I saw vehicles, people would have their four-wheel drive, they're going camping. You can explore mountains and there's hardly any people around. And the people you see, no offense to Mexico or whatever, they're more European. The Argentinians were Germans and Italians especially settled the place. And unfortunately, their way of handling the indigenous people, they just got rid of them to a certain degree. That's why you don't see many around there. You go to other places in South America, and there's a blend of the people, the Spanish with the Indians and whatnot, especially in Mexico, mestizo they call it, the dark skin and all that. And yeah, God, where can we go? The world of things I haven't seen. I haven't been all over the world, but I've seen a good chunk of it. And
You've been to all 50 states?
no, I drove a truck for half a year. That was interesting. And no, I've been to. There's a few things I've missed, but I've been on the up and down the West Coast and up and down the East Coast, and I've seen a lot of things of the world, and it's interesting. It really is. I had wanderlust at an early age, whether it's out of a boxcar or I thumbed around the country when that was still somewhat safe.
You hitchhiked around the country?
Yeah, I did.
How long did you do that?
Well, I did it on and off, out of high school or whatever.
Just get an itch to leave and you just go walk out on a highway with your bindle stick and put your thumb out?
I did that. Well, I was 15. I hitchhiked. My brother was in Miami Beach, going to school, Miami. Hair was playing. I remember at the theater down there, and I hitchhiked down there.
You hitchhiked from Chicago to Miami when you were 15 years old? To visit my brother.
He was in Coconut Grove. Yeah, maybe I could have been 14 years old, 14 or 15.
Did your parents know that you did that?
After I got down there, I think I made a.
So you left a note, 14, 15 years old, 7th, 8th grade.
Yeah.
And grabbed his knapsack and just put your thumb out and said, I'm going south.
Yeah.
How far can you get me?
Yeah.
And you went from, I never heard that one. You went from Chicago to Miami. As a grown-up, that's a scary thing to do, but you're a child. What did people say what did you tell them? You had to tell them a lie when you're 14 years old, like
okay, I could have been 15.
Whatever, 15. You were a kid.
Yeah,
so
I remember.
Did people say like, "Why are you not at home? Where's your parents?" Or did you just say?
When I got down there, I looked up my brother and stayed in Coconut Grove.
But I mean, like when an adult would pull over to pick you up.
I got picked up one time in that. Maybe I looked a little older, young, whatever. I got.
What'd you tell people?
I got picked up once. This guy was a college professor, an older Mercedes. And he had a couple of girls that he picked up already, a couple of females. I guess they were hitchhikers too or something.
Did you guys have a swingers party?
I'm back there. I remember.
I think they did.
I'm back there. I got my arm around the one. I just started. It's nighttime. We're driving. And next thing you know, I'm making out with her and stuff and getting a little bit friendly. And she's saying, man, you really know how to turn on a chick. I'm thinking, man, this is pretty cool. And I see this
is pretty cool.
I see this professor guy. He keeps looking in the mirror like this, and it was crazy. So how did that go down? We pull over at a rest area or something, or was that another time? And the guy was playing a guitar with us. He starts singing. We crawl off into a sleeping bag, and this one guy that was traveling with us, I can't remember if that was the time or not, and he starts strumming the song. Don't you love her madly? Don't you love her madly? And we're in a sleeping bag over there, and it was just you just go with the flow of things, And but I remember that professor guy. He's like keeps looking in the mirror. I'm back there. And she says, "Man, you really know how to turn on a chick for a young dude." And whatever,
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm not. Just you just go with it and crazy stuff. But then you end up nothing to show for it if you live licentious like that.
What do you mean nothing to show for it? You've got a treasure trove.
I do. Of memories and what. It's great,
So I coined this phrase, no pun intended. Maybe I didn't coin it, but it's the way I think about it. I don't like video games. But you remember...
well, your family does the same thing. You got one a shrimper up there, and I mean, it's
Sure.
like... And I find out I really inspired them. What's his name?
Yeah.
Tommy just said... I got into aviation and this because you, man, you're flying.
You inspired all of us.
And I just think it's great. You're an amazing family.
I finger banged 2 chicks in the back of a car with a school teacher because of you. I'm just kidding. That was a joke.
Yeah, right.
But remember Super Mario Brothers?
Yeah.
So you remember like the little character run, and while your goal's to get to the end of the level and then get to the next level, but while you're doing this, little things are trying to kill you, and there's little pits to fall in and shit. But then there were little coins, and you could jump up and collect the coins, and then the coins somehow helped your score.
Yeah.
So there's 2 types of people that play these video games. One just wants to win and not die and fall in the pits. But there's a person that wants to stop, and there's a timer going, right? Just like life. You got to take pills? Do you need some water? I don't want you to. I don't want you to.
Right here, man.
Don't not take your pills. There's a type of person.
Well, the coffee's got some caffeine in it, so that goes one way. So I need something to calm down.
All this talk of finger banging in the back of cars has got you spiked.
Oh, God.
There's another person, though, wants to collect all the coins. You know what I'm talking about? So, like, as they're running through the little level, they stop and they go back so they can jump up and collect all these coins. You tracking?
Yeah, kind of.
You wanted to collect coins. You wanted to collect the coins. So as you move through your life, you
That's kind of how I looked at it.
yeah, you were trying to like collect these little.
I enjoyed the road called. And now I look, I got some dangerous situations where I could have been.
Like what? Here,
Well, I never. I got
you need to swallow that.
Another friend, Dan. He's deceased now, but he was kind of an inspiration. He'd pick up and just travel all over the country.
Swallow that.
Huh?
Don't you need to swallow that pill?
Yeah, it was just a piece of it.
Oh.
Anyways, he kind of inspired me. He was a man of the world. He bummed Europe before I did and all that stuff. He'd pick up love wherever he could find it. And
You say love?
well, yeah, he had girls in different countries and stuff that he was kind of he was one of the first long hairs in Hazelcrest. He bought this old Cadillac, an older Cadillac. The hair died, one of the first real long hairs. I won't say his last name. And anyways, he had a guitar amp, like a Fender amp or something in the back seat, hooked to the sound system, and he would blast music. He was kind of one of the first hippies of Hazelcrest. Anybody from that era know what I'm talking about. I know his brother. See his brother once in a while, and he was just wild. I mean, it kind of inspired me. He had some tales where he almost got killed.
So what happened with you guys? You said you got in some scary situations. Was it him and you that got
No, he got in one where some people picked him up going down south.
Hitchhiking?
And, yeah, next thing you know, they were good old boys, taking him on roads and whatnot, back in the woods. He finally got a chance to escape. They were going to kill him.
He jumped out and just took off
He was
running?
hitchhiking with hair like this. This is when they would occasionally kill. I never had hair like this. Is in the beginning of that whole hippie thing. He said he got out and he ran through the woods. He finally found a house. He finally banged on the door, and the guy took him in and helped him, and he left the next day or whatever. But
So you had something like that happen?
I don't think, what's the most creepiest thing? No, I've been, I'll mention, I look back at the things I did that could have happened, even flying and whatnot. I had praying parents, to be honest. I look back, even your family, I'll say that I think you guys have all been healthy. You've done your own thing, like I did. And I think you're praying parents, and I hope you leave that in there. It's part of the matrix of it all, Somebody
matrix.
caring about you and loving you.
So what happened to you? You were saying something terrible might have or could have happened, but that was...
You're picked up with strangers, man. I don't care. You can be karate expert or something. They can pop a gun on you, all kinds of things,
Sure.
Now, that wasn't so bad then.
You're saying you just exposed yourself to a bunch of potential problems.
Yeah, bumming around, you're still seen as young.
I'd have been more scared of STDs, personally.
Well, that's out there.
Yeah, I bet it is.
It's all over now. It's almost part of high school. People have it. People
Yeah.
have all kinds of shit. I may have encountered a little bit of that stuff.
I may have encountered a little bit of that stuff.
You roam around, things happen.
Yeah.
In the Civil War, there were so many guys dying of syphilis and gonorrhea or whatever was around that the generals, probably on each side, were begging them.
Yeah, they brought in clean prostitutes.
Well, if they could, if there is such a thing, they didn't know how to examine them back then. But there were houses of prostitution. They begged the guys, don't go. It's depleting our manpower, because once they got it, they couldn't stop it. They would go to centers where they would die. I guess thousands of guys died of it. Yeah. And they had to take them out of battle, and they die a horrible death. And, it's been part of the military camp, It was, that part was kind of neat. Wherever you go in the military, there's going to be some women around.
Hell, we had, I think even in World War II, we had all kinds of sanctioned prostitution.
I went on an air base in Korea.
Oh, I think I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, we met up with Air Force jocks.
This was a U.S. Air Force base.
Yeah, and met up. It was cool. It was an exchange where we can meet. We're at a table. They came to our base first, and these guys, they're just a cut above. They're from somewhere like Harvard. These are graduates, high-level skills, brains, everything. And on the other side is helicopter pilots.
Like truck drivers in the sky.
Yeah, it was like two different worlds. I had to break the ice. I could kind of see what's going on. Some of the Army guys didn't know what to say. No offense, the Army is a great place.
Or you guys are like at some officers club just having dinner or something?
Yeah, this is daytime. And daytime, and we're talking with them, and I think, God, this base at this time in North Korea in where was this? Was in Korea.
Yeah, not North Korea.
This was on the edge, not too far from North Korea. This is where our best fighting. Well, number one, backing up at our office at the officer club in Korea, they'd have go-go dancers in one area. I mean, they're providing this. The taxpayers are funding military go-go dancers and stuff for entertainment for the guys.
Some slush fund of
whatever, yeah,
entertainment cash.
Well, here we are at this one base at the Air Force base now, not Army base. Because the prostitution thing was all over Korea. You know, they're great people, but they've been used, the Japanese comfort women, they call them, and there's just a whole segment of society that ends up working these bars and whatnot. But I had a Korean girlfriend. Actually, I worked in one of those bars for a while. Miss O is really a sweet lady. Anyways, the Air Force Base, it was really something. These guys, we go to their what they call, not the ready room or whatever, where the tower is, where the planes take off. It's carpeted in there. They open up. If you guys need something to drink, they open it. It's a refrigerator. This is where the pilots come in after a flight. They got F-16s all lined up. Open up. It's stacked with beer. You don't see that in aviation things in most anywhere.
Right, not even in like a little town airport.
These guys are disciplined. If you can't handle when to drink and when not, you don't belong here. And here's stacked. I think, well, that's unusual. And then they pointed over on a roof of a hangar, and there was Russian. I go, what's that Russian written? I didn't know exactly the words, but it says, "We're ready when you are." It was a challenge to the Russian pilots
from North Korea.
From North Korea that work with them. It was something like intimidating. We're ready, you bastards, and something up there in Russian. And these guys were the best. And afterwards, we partied with them. And these guys could hold beer, man. We're guzzling. Come on, guys. They're seeing what we're made of, and they were guzzling pitchers of beer, and doing it all the way down. Come on, man, power drinking. What's your problem? So
that does not sound
some of the
like
Army
fun.
guys are doing it, and someone said, and I start guzzling. I can't finish this thing, and someone says, just let it roll down your cheek. I said, I can't. I slam it down. I go around and back of the bar there. We're on the Air Force property, and there's other Army guys puking out in back of the place. They couldn't handle. These guys were like animals, man. Physically fit, mentally from fine schools. These were the best of the Air Force fighters. There was just such a difference as human beings. And then I find out all of these places where there's military, there is women. They're outside the gate. Go to the Ville tonight. This is where the Ville was. It's a good place to catch STDs. It's just the fact of life. The girls have been prostitutes there for a generation or so since World War II, and they're born into that, or they end up at these clubs, and they become almost enslaved in a way. They usually some nice gals, and that's their thing. It's a part of life. Anyways, the Air Force Base, I find out, this is, I was kind of shocked in a way, but it's really not shocking when you figure out how things work. If you got a village outside the gate, those gals out there, like if we use the term prostitutes, the working girls, they could be carrying something, a disease. These are Air Force guys. They don't want to go through that stuff. They're too valuable, you got to go home. You got something we can't cure. You got to this treatment. So what they do, they had working girls living on the base. And they're taken care of by the doctors. They're seen by they're checked by the doctors every few weeks, or the doctors, to make sure none of this goes on. I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. We're our tax dollars, but no, that's not really that. They're keeping these guys. If you want to go that route, they don't encourage it. We're going to at least check these girls that you're not going to catch something. And I heard some were living on the base, or well, that's the way the doctors could check the girls, the ones that wanted to. Or they had boyfriends that were on the base. I don't know. But it's just their way of dealing things. It's just the reality of military life, because that's obviously a lot of, I found in the Army, there's more sex going on just on any base than in the outside world. It's people really, you're going to find what you want. There's just a lot of swinging going on. There was a thing at the bases in Germany, when the guys go in the field, when a unit goes in the field in an apartment barracks where they're both living, male and female wives, they'd say suddenly you'd see cars pulling up for the ladies that are there alone, you know. It's a very sexed environment because of the thing, man. Everybody's always physical fit training. You don't know if you're going to see this person again, if it's wartime. It is what it is, you know, throughout history. But it was really something. These Air Force guys, they were top-notch fighting people, man, right up there in the front line. And they were party animals. They could take a thing of beer and just guzzle it down and recite something out of a trigonometry manual or something. You know?
That's funny. I had a kid I grew up with that became a, I think, F-15 pilot. He's probably a freaking colonel now.
Air Force?
Yeah, he went to the Air Force Academy. Actually met a guy. I got his business card right here. I need to get him on the podcast. His name is Doug McLean. Doug was an admiral, was in charge of the whole strike fleet, the whole carrier strike fleet, I believe, in the Pacific.
Wow.
Yeah, he had I met him with our friends from CCW Safe. He now owns it's called Rockin' Ranch. He's a certified Wagyu beef rancher. But yeah, but my point...
Buffalo or beef?
Beef.
Okay.
Wagyu beef. My point in bringing him up, every time I've met a fighter pilot like that, like a legit one, they are like, did you ever read the book about, what's his name?
Peppy Boynton? No.
About, where I was just looking to see if it's sitting here. Boyd, John Boyd. 42nd Boyd, he was the guy that kind of revamped all of aviation. He was an Air Force
I heard the
colonel, name. Colonel Boyd. He was famous for something he never said, the OODA loop, Observe, Orient, Decide, Act, and the military and law enforcement
sometimes they start adding things when you become a historic figure, you know.
But he talked about, even in his old life, people, when he got later in life, that fire still burned in him. People wanted to put him into teaching and stuff, but it was still this guy was a frickin' fighter pilot that rode the goddamn clouds, you know.
Yeah.
And he was.
There were amazing people, you know. Reading about them, our country's history, the military and fighting people. I don't know. There was a show, Baba Black Sheep, that was Pappy Boynton. I don't know all about his life, but I know one of the things he said later on. I think he was a hard-drinking guy. But he made a comment, and it's very interesting when it comes to so-called heroes and whatnot. He said, show me a hero and I'll show you a bum. Either that or a drunk, whatever. Show me a hero and I'll show you a bum or a drunk, something like that. And that's F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote the Great Gatsby. Now, I'm not really a personal literature. I don't know everything he wrote, but he also a little philosophy. His comment was, show me a hero and I'll write you a tragedy. And that JFK, that was a hero if there ever was one. If you read what he did in World War II, he was a genuine article.
Yeah, he was.
And a president that would fight and die for this country and in the White House. And
it's crazy how people don't think about those stories. I just was talking to somebody about that. You go read what he did in the Navy, and it was like, man, this dude was a freaking stud. Or George Bush. The first. Yeah, I mean, he was a freaking stud pilot, too.
18, but the thing is, and I'm not negating, his dad was a senator at the time. I'm not a fan of Bush's.
I'm talking about first Bush.
The senior, yeah. His dad was a senator at the time. And anyways, George Bush is shot down. He's one of the youngest naval aviators. I got to hand it to him. 18, he's shot down. And guess what? You're shot down. There's a submarine waiting to pick him up. I mean, they were looking at...
He spent like a night in the open ocean.
Is that what they said?
I believe so. Yeah, I remember just recently because there's a whole thing at the museum that we were just at.
Well, still, they apparently had whatever. The guy had some cojones. There's no question about it.
I guess I only mentioned it because we're talking about heroes and stuff. Let's do this. We'll wrap this up. I hope you guys understand. I mean, there's freaking 9,000 more of these little. He'll just all of a sudden bring up some other shit that you're like, what are you talking about? And you hear another one of these stories. You can just go and go and go. What, all this stuff that you've done? What's the synopsis? I usually will ask people this.
Sure.
If you've never met the people that are listening to this, viewing this, etc., what would you leave them with?
Wow. I've done a lot of things. I guess I'll just throw it in, Jesus Christ. I came back to Jesus Christ. We'll leave it there. I know people get tired of hearing that. He doesn't like the religious thing, but
well, it's not that I don't like it. I asked you your opinion.
It's been a part of my life. I did my own thing, and I was allowed to do it. I experimented with drugs, traveled the world, got to see the places. I'm hitchhiking around the Rhine River one year. A few years later, I'm flying a UH-1 helicopter down it. A lot of my dreams were fulfilled, really. And but in doing so, I kind of wasted a lot of my years. I miss having a family and all that. As I got older and you get to a certain point, that's in back of me. But I was reunited with a woman that I loved many years ago, and that's kind of a godsend. But I grew up in a godly family like Mickey, and I'll just put that out there. I got a taste of the world. I went out and lived the world. I didn't really understand this religious thing as a child. I had to see the world. I had to see history. I heard about my German ancestry. It fascinated me as a kid. We started. I was going to start a skateboard gang, the Gestapo. I'll tell you this story. We'll leave it. It was great. My dad, his mom was from Germany, so he didn't speak German, but he had a good background. Anyways, I'm like 12 or 13. I'm going to start a skateboard gang. It'll be the Gestapo, maybe German helmets, maybe the boots, and we're gonna. So I'm making up colors that I'm gonna wear. I made up a T-shirt. It said the Gestapo is here. It showed a swastika, a German helmet, and a bloody dagger. That was the name of the gang. Would be the Gestapo. I started doing my artwork on a T-shirt. Okay, this I'll never forget. My dad didn't even remember it when I mentioned it years later. Dad comes home from work. He's the electrician out there. He comes back to Hazel Cross. I'm in the backyard. I got my colors on, a T-shirt. We're going to be a skateboard gang, the Gestapo. Anyways, I say, I got it on. Hey, look, Dad, I made a shirt. I'm going to show it to him like this. Suddenly I hear like a grunt. Ah! He ripped my dad, I wouldn't say he's that strong. He ripped it, taking a T-shirt and just shredding it like that. He just ripped that shirt right off my back, and it's just hanging. I could feel air back there, and I thought, this ain't a good idea. I kind of left before he goes ape on me. I just disappeared. There's no Gestapo gang, nothing like that.
You didn't understand the totality of the symbols.
He's from Germany and whatnot, And we had an uncle. He was a German soldier. He did time in a prison camp. This is incidentally, more than English, America almost picked the German language by a vote away or whatever when our country was being founded. German is a very big, maybe even a dominant thing from European in America. So it does play a big part in our history, regardless. But anyways, that was a crazy thing, man. We never talked about that. It was that subtle. That I know, man. Something's popped in his brain. They ain't no. My son's not. What the hell? I look back on humor. I mentioned that he don't even remember doing that.
You didn't know what the hell you were playing. You didn't.
I didn't know that.
You saw war movies and shit. You didn't understand the totality of the evil that these people inflicted on humanity.
No, absolutely. But I mean, to this day, there are more books, swastika movies, Clint Eastwood. I mean, Jack Benny. All these actors wanted to be in a German uniform. Look it up. All these everybody wanted, still to this day, they want to do a movie and they want to dress like the Nazi officer and whatnot or whatever. They had the best of everything. They had some genius. Some say a lot of their intelligence came from the dark side. That based down in the Antarctic that they talk about. Something still goes on down there. Israel is there, by the way, south of Argentina. You get to a base, a lot of crazy stuff. But they rocked the world. They rocked the world, changed it, but at the heart of it, it's just sad. It's horrendous what went on. War is horrible. War is. I remember I was on a movie down in Key West. They were filming, and they had some SEALs off time, and they were in the movie with their rubber rafts. These guys were all pumped up, man. They were like, I say, hey, man, you guys, you're always ready for war. It's what about peacetime? He says, well, war is hell, but peace is a. That was his quote, The SEALs dudes, this is before they became all popular in the 70s. And these guys were like of a different, dudes like bodybuilders, but they're in all these skills. but they were used in the movie on the Cuba crossing about Captain Tony or something. Anyways, yeah, thanks for the interview, Mickey, and I could talk for hours.
You can.
You're an interesting fellow.
This is my synopsis, though. I think you keep looking back on some things that you didn't get to do. I mean, there's people that make babies and shit.
I know.
And then they're like, man, I never got to see the world. So, I mean, like...
Oh, yeah, well, it works both ways.
Yeah.
I got fantasies fulfilled. What did I want that I never could get? I look to God that way. Man, I've been dealing with cancer now and heart trouble, and I'm pushing 70 in a few months. Hey, that's what happens. You get in your 60s. How many people you know didn't make to 60? You know, the number starts going up.
Sure.
So I've had a really good life. It's been great. The world out there, the more I know, you're fascinated by it. I wanted to see that world from a boxcar, then let's see the other countries. And it's a great place, planet Earth. It really is. I know you have the same thing, and you love to explore. You're always doing really interesting things with your life, your skills, you're training other people, combat. Now who knows, you'll be making documentaries or something. It's you kind of surprised me where you're going. First, you were doing a construction thing 10, 15 years ago, and it goes on and on. I just think it's awesome.
One thing leads to another.
Well, don't let your head get too big.
My head's not big.
I know.
My head's not big, no.
It's great what you do. You love the history, different places, and the people, and you're recording it, your interviews. It's just,
well, what
it's
I
awesome.
think's cool, like, so you go do all this stuff, and then we get to capture some of it for posterity.
I think it's great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's good.
If I'm alive, I can look at this 10 years from now or whatever and say, man, what the
And there will be some chick out there that's going to go, that's the kid that frickin' rocked my world in the back of that professor's car.
Yeah, wow. I don't know. Your looks start changing at that point, you know. Yeah, crazy stuff. Crazy stuff.
Hey,
it was fun doing that.
I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. We kind of rambled around a little bit, but you just got to hang out with a couple of dudes bullshitting. It's the day after Christmas 2022, so for posterity, today's the 26th of December 2022. If you viewed this on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, leave a comment. If you're on one of the podcast apps, leave a comment and a review. Tell us what you thought of the discussion. And if there's something you didn't like about it, go be well, don't be dickheads.
Thanks for having me on, Mick.
Yeah, man.
It was great. It was great.
Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.
Hey, man, what are you doing in the podcast room, Steve?
I'm writing a national anthem. It's going to be at folk festivals for gunfighter gun oil.
Oh.
Let me tell you about gunfighter gun hire. Made in the USA. Gunfighter gun oil, 100% synthetic. It's gonna last you, baby. Yeah. Gunfighter gun oil is the best I've ever seen. It's gonna make you get everything that you've ever seen. Oh, baby, I love me some gunfighter gun oil. Yeah. Oh, gunfighter gun oil. Gunfighter.
Gonna get my lighter out. I don't have it.
It wasn't even Bob Dylan. It was like a love story.